In the eternal night, the terrifying undead king used his magic to control the undead, roaring, "You deserve to be my eternal enemy, Knight of Light." Heinrich, he is truly the nightmare of the entire continent, the undead king. But as long as the power of light is with me, we will never lose. Both of them represented opposing forces clashing in battle. Heinrich sprouted wings and flew high, raising his sword to strike down at the righteous Knight of Light. Han Seong-hyun, sitting on his chair drinking beer, muttered boredly, "What kind of fight is that? It's like a bad stage play." He held his beer can and shouted, "Well, whatever. It's just a show anyway." He sighed, looking around the room. "How did everything get to this point? It's all my fault." A fresh morning in a small apartment building was interrupted by a cheerful greeting. "Good morning." A man holding a piece of paper stood at Han Seong-hyun's door and introduced himself. "I'm from the Special Investigation Unit of the Ability Management Bureau. Are you Han Seong-hyun?" Han Seong-hyun's face darkened as he looked away and replied, "Yes, as you can see." He stood straight, leaning on his crutch, listening to the man outside say, "Confirmed. If you awaken any abilities, please remember to report them to the Ability Management Bureau. Have a good day." Han Seong-hyun stood still, saying nothing, thinking to himself, "My first interaction with someone in half a year is over." He turned and rummaged through a cabinet, contemplating, "Meaning I won't need to open the door again for the next 6 months." Han Seong-hyun pulled out a package of instant noodles and sighed. Expired. "It's been 2 years since I went outside. I'm isolating myself from society." In his trash-filled room, he stood up, leaning on his crutch, and groaned quietly. "Ugh," he thought, "some people would say I'm pathetic, or scold me for lacking willpower." Han Seong-hyun stared at the TV and murmured, "But I'm a victim of this damned world." Suddenly, the TV blared, breaking news. The TV showed a female reporter standing in front of a fire, reporting, "Firefighters are battling a blaze at a shopping mall. The arsonist appears to be an awakened individual who randomly committed the crime before being transferred to another world." Awakened individual. Han Seong-hyun's eyes blazed with sudden intensity. Han Seong-hyun began to remember. One day, humanity randomly received mysterious awakened powers known as abilities. Once someone awakens an ability, they are forcibly summoned to another world within 24 hours. If they meet certain conditions, they can return to Earth, but very few people ever survive and make it back. That day, he saw the same kind of fire engulf everything. A desperate awakened individual committing reckless crimes right before being transported. 2 years ago, Han Seong-hyun could only watch the blaze consume everything. "I lost my family and my legs because of those crimes. Maybe even the courage to stand again." He started trying to exercise, to regain the use of his legs, but they trembled and couldn't bear his weight. Ugh. Finally, Han Seong-hyun let them fall, giving up on trying to lift them again in Dagon. He was drenched in sweat, his breath heavy and ragged. His eyes were ringed with dark circles. "Why do I keep doing this useless charade?" he muttered. Sweat streamed down his face. Pathetic. He slumped, lost in thought. Why do I freeze up in fear every time I try to go outside? If I were braver, would anything change? Han Seong-hyun's vision darkened, and he wiped his mouth, thinking, if I could just escape this damned room and go somewhere. Suddenly, a light appeared in front of him, startling him. A notification appeared. Spatial distortion detected, connecting to the Akasha system, awakening unique skill. Han Seong-hyun looked around in shock and exclaimed, "The hell? I'm just awakening like this?" A system interface formed a blue space and announced, "Awakened Unique Skill, Avatar." Awakened Unique Skill, Avatar. Awakened the remaining time before your transfer is... A countdown timer appeared on the system interface along with a message. 24 hours. You have 24 hours. He panicked, terrified. Why me? Are you kidding me? The emotionless system voice continued. If you do not enter the transfer zone within the given time, forced transfer will be automatically activated. Han Seong-yun grabbed his crutch and rushed towards the screen, but passed right through it. Yelling, "Where?" He began rummaging through his closet, thinking, they said it takes at least a year to return to Earth. Time in the other world is 10 times slower than on Earth. Han Seong-yun's eyes widened. So, I'll need to survive for at least 10 years to come back. Can I even survive? After a long pause, the system announced, 3 minutes remaining before transfer. His legs trembled as he approached the gate. Han Seong-yun, trembling with a large backpack and crutches, carefully made his way towards the portal. Huff, huff. As his toes entered the light, he cried out in his heart, "Impossible." Han Seong-yun, clutching his head, knelt down a short distance from the portal, thinking, "Impossible. I can't even walk out the door." He closed his eyes tightly, his head in his hands. Without power or skills, how will I survive in another world? A flash of insight made him exclaim, "Wait." Han Seong-yun looked at his hand, thinking, "Skills. That means I have an ability, right? Let's see what kind of power I have." He shouted, "Activate skill, Avatar." He opened his eyes and saw another version of himself appear. Also opening its eyes, Han Seong-yun stared at the man who looked identical to him in disbelief and shouted, "What the hell? It's me." He then bit his lip slightly and whimpered in pain. Han Seong-yun could see 2 identical versions of himself, which made him exclaim, "I'm seeing 2 of myself." The 2 figures stood close, back to back, and he thought, "No way. This is..." Suddenly, Han Seong-yun's eyes widened. "I understand." In his eyes, he saw what the clone was seeing. "I can share the viewpoint of my avatar." Han Seong-yun's eyes fell to the ground. He covered his mouth, fighting nausea. "Ugh, trying to control both bodies makes me dizzy. It's impossible to move them both at the same time." Suddenly, the system voice announced, 1 minute remaining before transfer. If you do not enter the transfer zone, forced transfer will automatically activate." Han Seong-yun slumped against his clone, gasping, "Ha, what a useless avatar. Out of all the possible abilities, why did I get one even more useless than I am?" He raised his head to look at his clone. "Ah, if only someone could go instead." Then, realizing something, he continued, "Instead of me." The avatar's eyes stared blankly at Han Seong-yun, devoid of any emotion. The avatar's feet, clad in boots, stepped into the portal. The system voice rang out, "Awakened transfer confirmed, commencing transfer." He closed his eyes, thrusting both hands forward, "Go." A light began to glow from under his feet. The system announced, "Starting transfer." Han Seong-yun slumped, looked at his avatar, excited. It worked. Han Seong-yun looked at the blue light in front of him, excitedly thinking, "The transfer zone recognized my avatar as me." The system voice rang out, "Completed transfer to the Utrika space." He woke with a start in a vast forest, looking at his surroundings, horrified. Han Seong-yun looked at his hands, unable to believe it. His face turned pale. "I sent my avatar. So why am I here?" Looking at the trees around him, the system appeared. "You can return to Earth by choosing the return option in the merit shop." Han Seong-yun looked at the tall trees. The system continued, "Please collect merit points in your adventure." The system then informed, "Current merit points, 0. Immediately, he let out a loud scream. In Han Seong-yun's vision, he could see both his room and the forest. He immediately understood. "I'm not really here, I'm just sharing my avatar's vision." Han Seong-yun shouted, "Ah, so dizzy, cancel summon." He immediately returned to the reality of his modern-day room. Han Seong-yun's face darkened instantly as he covered his mouth. Han Seong-yun rushed to the bathroom and vomited. After throwing up, he wiped his mouth, relieved. "At least I avoided the transfer crisis." He raised his hand. "Summon avatar?" Han Seong-yun looked at the clone of himself and sighed. "I'm in big trouble." He moved closer to the clone, lamenting, "How am I supposed to use this useless ability?" Suddenly, the system popped up, accompanied by celebratory fireworks. "Congratulations! You have achieved a great accomplishment." Returning to Earth without using the merit shop, the system didn't stop there. You have received a special reward, unlocking Spatial Transfer Gate achievement. Every day, you can travel to one area you have previously visited through the transfer gate. He shouted in surprise, "What?" Han Seong-yun's eyes widened as the system announced, "Your merit points have increased significantly." And so, within the apartment under the sunset, a loud scream echoed, "Huh." Finally, he whispered to himself, "I became an awakened individual who returned to Earth in the shortest time." The system panel appeared announcing, "Merit points available, 1,910,213. Han Seong-yun touched his chin, thinking in disbelief. 1.9 million points. He looked at the system panel displaying, "Merit Shop, merit points 1,910,213. Return to 1 million. He couldn't help but marvel. All this just for canceling the Avatar summon. I gained enough points for 10 years all at once. Han Seong-yun pondered, returning to cost 1 million points. Merit is calculated based on your actions in that other world, doing good or evil, killing or working diligently, and so on. He sat on the sofa, lost in thought. The accumulated merit can be used to enhance skills or return to Earth. What if there's a catch? What if they ask me to pay it back later? Han Seong-yun threw his head back on the sofa, comfortable, and exclaimed, "Well, it's not like I intentionally broke anything, so whatever." He looked at the system panel, saying, "Let's see. I'm on Earth, so returning is useless." Above on the system panel were the options: return to 1 million, upgrade existing skill 300,000, enhance status, see details. At this, he paused with a slight sound of doubt. Han Seong-yun put his hand to his mouth, pondering, what's in the enhance status section? Finally, he tapped the text, stamina status, increases recovery ability 10,000. Han Seong-yun recoiled, thinking, increase recovery ability. He immediately selected the option. A blue surge of power quickly enveloped Han Seong-yun's leg. He softly mumbled, "I can feel something in my leg." Data surrounded his leg. Then, the wound on his thigh. He thought, "My wound, it's recovering." Han Seong-yun suddenly remembered the explosion, saying, "For me, the leg injury isn't just an inconvenience, but a scar marking my farewell with my family." He crouched alone, step by step, and closed himself off in his room, thinking, and also, a scar that has confined me. The system voice echoed with the power covering his leg. The recovery power has exceeded the standard level. Next, a system panel appeared. Skill, you have acquired super regeneration. Effect, enhances recovery power. The night completely enveloped the city, with only the moonlight shining down. In the training room, Han Seong-yun sat on a bench, lifting weights with his leg, looking at the system panel, joyfully proclaiming, "I poured merit points into healing my injured leg. It's ridiculously healthy now." He panted, looking at the system panel, and yelled, "But I still have a lot of merit points left. What should I use them on?" Suddenly, Han Seong-yun noticed the text on the system panel. Upgrade existing skill, 300,000. He was surprised, wondering, upgrade existing skill. He tapped on the text. Han Seong-yun pulled back his hand, looking at the blue light, and chuckled, "What could I do if I enhanced my avatar skill?" After a while, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He smirked at the clone opposite him, whispering, "Indeed, I look quite dashing." The clone also complimented, "You have a great physique. You must have trained, right?" He laughed in response, "This is the result of hard work." Han Seong-yun cheerfully began introducing, "When I awakened the avatar skill, my consciousness split in two, allowing me to move freely." He tilted his head, looking at the system panel, saying, "And a new skill obtained by enhancing existing skills." The system displayed calm mind, filters stimuli and emotions, accepting only the information you wish to receive. Han Seong-yun smiled, knocking his clone into the door, thinking, "This means not only am I not affected by spatial shock, but I also won't feel any pain even if my main body is injured." He turned to look at his trash-filled room, saying, "Now then." Han Seong-yun happily picked up the remote, saying, I can explore another world from the comfort of my room now. He looked at his clone and said, I can control my avatar like I'm playing a game. Han Seong-yun, with his 2 other clones, suddenly appeared in the room, declaring, That isn't the only change. Now there are 3 of us. He frowned, muttering, The number of clones will increase if I get stronger. This is getting a bit confusing. He then loudly announced, Later, let's give you guys names first. The 3 of them huddled together, falling into thought, taking turns speaking, We can't just keep calling you clone. But I'm not confident in naming a name. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun noticed the beer and ketchup on the table and exclaimed, Oh, that's it. He pointed at the one wearing a vest. From now on, you're Hans. The system panel displayed Hans, general status, calm mind, super regeneration, personal status, mana affinity. Special note, Han Seong-yun's first avatar. Then, Han Seong-yun pointed at the other clone, continuing, And you'll be Heinz. The system panel displayed Heinz, general status, calm mind, super regeneration, personal status, endurance. Special note, Han Seong-yun's second avatar. Han Seong-yun sweated, looking at his 2 clones. Mana affinity and endurance. Are they both useless? Han Seong-yun's eyes sharpened. Now then, let's get to the long-awaited main mission. Hans stepped into the transport portal. Heinz carried a bag of trash, and Han himself sat on the chair. The 3 of them simultaneously shouted, Let's go! Heinz, his face pale, walked out with a year's worth of trash, responding, To the other world we go. The transport portal glowed and then disappeared. Han Seong-yun stood by the window gazing at the scenery outside. He shielded his eyes with his hand. Heinz stood facing the sun with a bag of trash, thinking, I don't feel worried at all. He smiled, thinking, Calm mind is working correctly. Han Seong-yun glanced over, saying, Hans must have already arrived in the other world. The transport portal glowed, and a pair of feet appeared. Hans looked up at the sky, saying, Is it already night? A pair of eyes flashed in the forest, but he didn't notice them as he continued, Nothing seems to be appearing. This forest seems peaceful, doesn't it? Suddenly, a black panther appeared in front of him, making him yell in surprise, Oh my, why did you appear so suddenly? The panther jumped, pouncing towards him. Hans quickly drew his sword to block the attack. It jumped, biting onto the sword he was holding. Looking at the saliva dripping from the panther's mouth, soaking the sword, he grimaced. You disgusting. Hans pulled back his sword, thinking, Indeed, I don't feel any fear or pain here. He raised his sword high and slashed down, shouting, In short, this is mana slash, just like in a game. A powerful slash descended, blood splattered everywhere in the dim forest. Hans turned and looked at the panther's corpse, lying on the ground, killed by a single strike. The sword emitted a blue light, piercing its body. He looked up at the sky, sitting down hard on the ground. Is it because I'm still weak? This is exhausting. If I stay here and encounter another monster, it'll be a big problem. He was shocked when he saw a small structure in the distance. Looking closer, Hans excitedly yelled, There's a village. An old, bald man appeared, smiling warmly. Welcome, traveler. I'm the village elder. My name is Malcolm. He followed Hans, praising, You came through the forest path filled with monsters at this late hour. That's quite impressive. Hans smiled and replied, That's why I'm all covered in wounds. Hans scratched his head awkwardly, asking, By the way, can I stay in the village for one night? Malcolm immediately smiled, replying, Of course. It's something we should help with. He patted his chest, relieved, saying, Thank you very much. The elder led him forward and asked, This is the first time I've seen clothing and equipment like yours. Are you from a faraway place? Hans looked at him, smiling. It happened as I collected various things and wandered around. Malcolm chuckled. Oh, I understand. His expression turned serious as he asked intimately, It's nice to see an outsider after so long. Would you like a drink at the village tavern? Hans was sitting on a comfortable bed. He propped up his head with his hands, grinning. They even gave me an empty room. The more I see this village, the kinder it feels. How long has it been since I last enjoyed a good time with other people? And there's drinking too. Hans yawned, whispering, "Today has been so much fun." A shadow appeared in Hans' room. On the other side, Han Seong-yun held a glass of beer high, shouting, "Kia! The best." He leaned back on the sofa, saying, "Eating chicken after a bath while traveling to another world." Han Seong-yun turned to look at the space next to him, muttering, "Even though I feel a bit bad for Heinz." He watched Heinz training diligently, saying, "Heinz is practicing his stamina to use his skill endurance. I don't know when I'll send him. It's good to prepare." Han Seong-yun looked at him, all tense and with low pressure. Great. The more diligent the clones, the more they can learn about the world and the nature of the other world. He turned on his computer, thinking, "I'll play the role of the perfect commander." Suddenly, a picture flashed in his mind, making him exclaim, "Wait a minute." A spark flashed through his mind as he thought, "Why do I have this ominous feeling?" A red system panel appeared. "Clone has died. All of the clone's accumulated status and data will be reset." He froze, thinking of the earlier scene, and yelled in shock, "What?" Hans died. A bright red system interface appeared, announcing, "Avatar has died. All accumulated stats and data for this avatar will be reset." Han Seong-yun, jolted, thought of his beer-drinking self and exclaimed, "What? Hans is dead." He reached out and touched the vivid red system interface. He was in the village, but he died anyway. Thinking of the smiling Malcolm, he said, "Indeed, it must be that old man who did it." He thought of his beer, suspecting, did he switch my drink? Han Seong-yun clutched his head, blaming himself. "I got careless in a strange place, ugh." Suddenly, Han Seong-yun paused, suspicious. A white figure appeared. "I've reconnected to the avatar," he thought. On the other side, Malcolm walked away, irritated, muttering, "Ch, I thought he was going to be useful, but it turns out he's nothing." Jeffy, who was walking beside him, quickly replied, "Yeah, I guess." He looked at Hans's skeletal remains. He passed through the forest on his own, so I thought he was capable. Malcolm stared at his skeleton, but it's just a skeleton. After the two left, Hans raised his hand, noticing his bones. "What's this?" he wondered. The system interface appeared. Personal race changed to undead. You have acquired special skill, Decayed Heart. Then another system message appeared. Hans race, undead, high skeleton. General status, tranquility, super recovery. Personal status, mana affinity. He looked at the system interface in shock. "I've become an undead." Another system message popped up. Special note, you have become undead. Due to the tranquility effect, your mind is not crazed. Hans looked around, whispering, "What is this? Where am I?" He suddenly stopped, his eyes fixated on something. Hans stared at the standing undead in front of him, bewildered. What the hell are these things? Then he panicked, guessing, is this their doing? Hans looked at the remaining undead. Did they turn the entire village into undead? Suddenly, Jeffy burst through the door. He pretended to be still, glancing to the side, wondering, who's that? Hans lowered his head, thinking, it's the guy from the tavern yesterday. As he walked, he sighed, how long do I have to stay in this remote mountain region? Hearing this, he thought, so the people I met earlier are all dark magic users. Suddenly, Jeffy turned and looked at Hans with a strange look, then exclaimed. Hans, noticing Jeffy frown as he looked at him, thought, why is he looking at me like that? Did he realize I can move? Jeffy muttered, why is this thing here? No one is doing their job properly. He waved his hand, ordering, get over there. Hans lowered his head, groaning, my heart is rotten, and I almost had a heart attack. Suddenly, his arm moved without his control, which made him confused. Hans stood up, walking in the direction he was told. He pondered, I feel a power compelling me to move. If I focus, I can still ignore it, but it's better to just let it be. Jeffy tilted his head, irritated. Why do I always get stuck with checking this place? That old man is too cautious. Jeffy quickly left. After hearing the door close, he thought, That's a very familiar power. Hans looked at his bony hand and murmured, "It's like the power that moves my undead body." He clenched his hand, guessing, is it due to the mana affinity stat? Maybe I've found out how this power works. Hans stood among the other undead, clenching his fist, thinking, maybe I can control the other undead too. A week later, sunlight illuminated the village. Inside a small, deserted cellar, Hans sat on a large wooden crate, looking at the skeletal undead before him. Finally, he exhaled a plume of white smoke. 2 bright, chilling blue lights appeared in Hans's eyes. The skeletal undead below slowly moved, raising its foot, preparing to stand. Hans's eyes flashed blue, gradually controlling it. Finally, the undead could stand completely straight. Finally, I can control other undead, he thought happily. Hans looked at the undead, which was hopping back and forth, thinking, this is too much, and still so clumsy. He touched his face, confused. Moreover, I can only control one undead. Is it because of the high skeleton limit? Suddenly, the squeaking of a mouse made him stop. Hans looked down at the mouse, which was nibbling on his heel. He reached out and grabbed it, which made it scream in panic. Squeak! Hans poked the small mouse in his hand. Caught you, you little mouse. You're the one who has been gnawing on my heels all week, right? He frowned at the mouse, scolding, You're such a nimble one. Suddenly, Hans realized something and blurted out, Wait, small and nimble. If I use this instead of a person. He held the mouse in one hand, gathering blue energy. Should I try it? Hans quickly lowered his hand. A horrific scream echoed. Fresh blood sprayed everywhere as the mouse lay lifeless in his hand. Then, its eyes flashed bright red and it sat up. Hans raised his hand, happily thinking, it worked. He let it go, pointing forward. Go, Alfred. Start night patrol. It will eavesdrop on conversations at night. The mouse, with its eyes rolled back, looked around, sniffing. In front of Alfred was Jeffy, who was standing in front of a door, grumbling, Wait and see, I'll definitely make that cautious old man. Hearing this, he thought, this guy is always complaining. Through Alfred, he saw Jeffy put a key in the door, wondering, what about the other storerooms? Are there undead there too? He watched Jeffy enter, hesitant. Should I follow him? A chilling purple light emerged. Alfred saw a dark patch emitting a strong purple light, and sent this to Hans. He wondered in shock, what is that? Even though he had neutralized his emotions with tranquility, he could feel it through his instincts. His consciousness inside the mouse thought, getting closer will be dangerous. A man faced Jeffy. Good, very good. When will this maturity process be over? Jeffy looked up, complaining, whether it's the fragment of the undead king or whatever, I feel like my lifespan is getting shorter. The man shouted excitedly, Can't you speed it up? The master is stuck there every day. He looked up at the sky, replying, Isn't it ridiculous that we're just guarding this place? Not just the village, we've also set traps in every building. No one would bother sneaking in anyway. Alfred, far away, turned his head, muttering, Oh, thanks for the information. What I saw earlier must have been a fragment of the undead king. It sniffed the air, thinking, Where can I get more info? That village chief bastard will be... A stream of black and purple energy pierced its chest. Fresh blood sprayed as it writhed in pain. Malcolm's feet stepped out from the shadows, approaching. He looked at it, chuckling. I wondered what it was, but it's just a rat. Alfred thought, Damn, I've been found. Malcolm stared at it. Undead. I can't sense any dark magic, but its body is unnaturally imbued with dark mana. He looked at Alfred, struggling. An undead made by dark mana, huh? Malcolm turned, letting it fall to the ground. There's only one place overflowing with dark mana here. He appeared, smiling gently. Jeffy, are you in charge of the storeroom today? The two who were talking shouted in surprise. Master. Alfred, lying alone on the ground, slowly stiffened. On the other side, Hans's eyes glowed blue. I'm sorry, Alfred. I will avenge you. Please watch over me. Faint light appeared at the top of the village. Jeffy kicked open the door, yelling, Who would have thought a rat would crawl out of there? So what if there's a rat? You annoying old man. He pointed inside, yelling angrily, "You guys, you're not lined up." He then barked orders, "Stand in a straight line." Jeffy quickly approached, yelling, "You stupid thing." He punched the head of a male undead, scolding. I said, "Stand straight." Jeffy squatted down, looking at the undead, and made a puzzled noise. He reached out and grabbed its hair. "Who are you again?" Jeffy laughed, mocking. "Isn't this the arrogant Ajusi who went against me? You said you wouldn't let me get away with harming your family." He smiled wickedly. "Say it again, HM." "Oh, that's right. I ripped your tongue out." Jeffy then threw his head to the ground. "Ah, this is no fun at all." He put his hands over his head, turning away. "It's fun when I hunt all those bastards in the village." The undead on the ground had its fingers twitch. Jeffy, oblivious, approached a female undead. "However, you should be happy to be with your wife." The male undead lunged, grabbing Jeffy's shoulder with its mouth as he said, "And the other houses? Those kids." Jeffy, shocked, yelled as his shoulder was being bitten. Seeing it trying to move forward, he yelled, "Stop! I said stop!" Jeffy, seeing it still moving towards him, gathered magic. "You bastard." Suddenly, another female undead appeared, covering his mouth with her hand. Jeffy tried to escape from her grip. On the other side, more undead charged toward him. They all lunged with wide-open mouths, blood splattered everywhere. Hans appeared behind the undead. His eyes radiated blue light. This is the start of the victim's revenge. Han Xiong-yun tried to explain to the two guards at the village gate, "I'm telling you, my brother is in this village." One of the guards pushed him back, saying, "Didn't they leave a long time ago?" The two of them were dismissive of his reasons, responding apathetically, "How could we have carelessly let an outsider like you in?" Han, growing impatient, said, "Then at least let me see the village chief." At that moment, the village chief strolled over and said, "What's all this commotion about?" He introduced himself, "I am the village chief." Han quickly greeted him, "Hello, village chief." Seeing Hans's face, he paused, bewildered, and asked, "You are—" Without hesitation, Han gave the reason he had prepared. "I believe my twin brother, Hans, is somewhere around here." On the other side, Hans thought, having two bodies is really useful at times like this. The stone was constantly emitting energy, and he thought, thanks to Heinz dealing with that old man, I managed to sneak in here. Gazing at the stone in front of him, which was overflowing with energy, he couldn't help but marvel. This is it, the fragment of the undead king. I can feel overwhelming power. The stone trembled slightly, and he questioned it. Did it absorb dark energy from the undead around me? No, it's more like resonating to fill in what's missing instead of just absorbing. Hans looked around, noticing something was unusual, but he paid it no mind. Looking up at a tall skeleton in front of him, he recognized with sadness, those guys here seem extremely strong. It seems like the place I was before was just a storeroom for defective goods. Reaching out and grabbing the stone, he thought angrily, this is annoying. Shouldn't be too picky now. Holding the stone in his hand, Hans grinned, let's see what this snack tastes like. Without further ado, he began absorbing the power from the mysterious stone. Back at the village gate, the village chief cautiously asked Han, so you two are twins? Han replied plausibly, that's why we can always find each other. He gave a gentle smile, stroking his white beard. Ho, ho, a little hard to believe. Malcolm suddenly sensed something. He shouted, the fragment is acting up. He immediately ordered the two guards, kill that bastard. The two guards, upon hearing this, raised their spears towards Han, yelling, you bastard! But he was no longer there, leaving the two guards confused. Huh? Where did he go? Sounds from hell constantly roared, kill, hate all living things, kill them. The more you trample the world, the stronger you become. Hans felt a massive wave of negative emotions continuously pulling at him. The sounds of slaughter kept ringing in his ears. He struggled to stay conscious. Although tranquility was blocking it, they still kept pouring in. Hans shouted in his heart, who can withstand this and still stay conscious? As if he reached his limit, he yelled in pain, A light flashed, engulfing everything. No one knew what was happening inside that light. After a moment, the light faded, and a mechanical voice rang out, "The entity has met the conditions and is evolving." Hans slowly emerged from the rubble. He was no longer an ordinary skeleton. He was now a Demilich, an undead mage. The transformation was thanks to the fragment of the undead king. The hidden dark magic inside the fragment had assimilated with his being. The system announced, "You have acquired special skill, Devil's Intellect, notable information, grants absolute understanding and talent in dark magic." A lackey of Jeffy's, waiting outside, was losing patience. "Damn it, Jeffy, you bastard. You couldn't even handle a zombie rat. Now I have to deal with this mess." Suddenly, a deafening shout came through his communication device. "Hey, you bastard!" He replied quickly, "Yes, master, there's nothing here." The other end didn't care what he had to say, impatiently ordering, "Stop talking nonsense and go check on the fragment. Contact Jeffy, too." The guard immediately complied. "Yes. Hey, Jeffy, check on the fragment. Hurry up." Seeing no response, he started shaking the door. "Hey, are you listening?" Inside, a bright light suddenly flashed. Still getting no response, the guard angrily said, "Hey, why aren't you answering me?" Several hands reached out, grabbing the guard, who was not expecting it. "Huh?" On the other side of the door, a horde of zombies rushed to grab Jeffy's lackey. He exclaimed in horror, "Eek!" A voice came from behind the zombies. "Hello there." Hans even asked, "Nice weather today, isn't it?" The man couldn't believe what he was hearing. He thought, "No way, how can it talk?" Being grabbed by the zombie's hands, he quickly summoned a magic sphere to escape. Get lost." Then, he swung his arm and threw the sphere towards the door. Go. But that was a wrong move. He accidentally destroyed the door separating the zombies from reaching him. "Huh?" Hans walked out right after, "Hey, ignoring a greeting like that hurts my feelings, you know." Easily controlling the dark energy, he thought. I don't know if it's because of Devil's Intellect, but raising a flame in his hand, he realized, just by looking at dark magic, I immediately know how to use it. A loud explosion occurred, along with pieces of rock flying everywhere. Hans said calmly, "Advance, undead." He commanded the zombies and skeletons, "Don't let anyone escape. Kill everyone in this village." The zombies immediately charged forward. Suddenly, a skeleton fell down in front of Hans, making him exclaim, "What the hell?" Malcolm had arrived by then, his voice strained. He gritted his teeth. "You should have become a high skeleton, nothing more." No longer resembling the gentle old man, he completely revealed his true self and angrily asked, "What have you done with the fragment of the undead king, you who challenged the elder, Marcos Giocoli?" Hans casually greeted him, "Long time no see, village chief. Do you still remember me?" He even mocked him, "Well, thanks to you, I lost my heart, so..." Summoning a dark energy beam, he implied, "I picked out a new one from the storeroom." Malcolm gritted his teeth. "Grr!" He yelled, "You dared to fuse the fragment of the undead king with that low-life body." He pointed to the sky, launching an attack. "Die, finger of death." A blast of dark energy rushed towards Hans. He raised his hand, blocking the attack. Kook. The attack was indeed strong. It blew off Hans's hand. Annoyed, he said, "Old man, don't you know it's polite to wait and not attack when people are talking?" Malcolm's eyes turned red. "Shut your mouth. I've poured all the resources I had for a year into this progress." He frantically attacked and said, "I'm about to reach a power beyond anything else in this world. It's not for a skeleton like you to become a Demilich." He unleashed a technique that stabbed directly from the ground, dark spikes. Upon contact with the attack, Hans said suspiciously, "Isn't that just like putting a high-level enchantment on a newbie's item?" He proudly challenged Malcolm, "So what? I'm the only one who can use it like this. You'll never be able to do it." Malcolm, who had always wanted to deal with Hans, didn't know how you could resist corruption. "But I'll destroy your body and use it as an experiment specimen." He cast another technique, destroying oozing. Hans sarcastically commented, "Ugh, ending with the skill's name is really annoying," but he also focused on the fight. "Die, you enemy of Alfred." Hearing the strange name, Malcolm questioned, "Alfred, do you know anyone in this village? Did you infiltrate this place because you knew everything from the start?" Suddenly, he was ambushed from behind. Malcolm quickly used a barrier to block the attack, but struggled a bit. He realized the problem. That doesn't matter. He's unnaturally familiar with dark magic. Is it due to the power of the fragment? Noticing that prolonging the fight was disadvantageous, I can't waste any more time. Malcolm unleashed a killing move, Pact of Annihilation. At the same time, the villagers were fighting the zombies. Some of them were affected by the dark energy. The person beside him asked worriedly, "What's wrong? What happened?" A series of people, affected by the dark energy, screamed in pain. Grah! Some people noticed something was amiss. The souls of the dark magic users are being drained. Malcolm stretched out his hands, grabbing a black crown of annihilation. He put it on and declared, "Rest in peace." Hans realized that Malcolm's move wasn't simple. "Are you amplifying power at the expense of the dark magic users' souls?" he asked. He had completely lost control. Now the only thing on his mind was how to kill Hans. You might have been able to hold on thanks to the fragment's power, but now you die, soul flame sunk into darkness. Before he could finish, Malcolm suddenly stopped. A blast of dark energy shot straight into his neck. Hans easily finished off Malcolm with a single move. He also looked bored. Hearing those skill names almost made me fall asleep. "Let's end it here." He walked up to Malcolm, provoking him. "Anyway, thanks to you, I learned dark magic. Knowing he couldn't escape death, he regretted. To die like this." Malcolm fell to the ground. So useless. Hans lifted his head to the sky, talking to himself. "You're watching, right? I've avenged you, so—" It was as if Alfred had truly become a star in the sky. He gently whispered, "Rest in peace, Alfred." Inside a church far away, a nun had been kneeling and praying for a long time. She suddenly felt that something bad had happened. She rushed to knock on the door. "Bishop Martin." The bishop opened the door, surprised. Have you finished praying?" It turns out this person wasn't an ordinary nun. The bishop, called Saintess Restar, she, who was called the Saintess, replied seriously, "Yes, can you contact the others?" She directly said what she felt earlier. There are signs of the undead king's resurrection in the west. Upon hearing that, the bishop exclaimed in horror, "The undead king!" Recognizing the importance of the matter, she quickly ran off. "I understand. I will call a meeting right away." Restar was worried. The undead king, his resurrection, the one who plunged the continent into fear hundreds of years ago. She secretly made up her mind. I will not let something like that happen again. Looking at the scattered bones and zombie corpses, Hans felt a pang of regret. "Such a huge loss," he said. "There were several hundred undead, but they are almost completely wiped out." An idea suddenly popped into his head. "However, if the numbers are reduced, I can just replenish them. The fun thing about becoming a necromancer is that I can use corpses to build my army." Looking at his missing left arm, he said helplessly, "I need to take care of this arm first." Hans walked around, looking for a replacement. He picked up an arm from another skeleton. "This one looks decent." Attaching it to the right place, he activated Super Recovery. Soon, the new arm was completely attached. He moved it a few times and said, "Perfect. Now, let's start building the army, shall we?" Hans used his dark power to control the skeletons. "You shall become my subordinates." He used his power to slowly lift up a skeleton. "Evil intellect, show me the way," he thought. He chanted a spell in his mind, "The fragment of the undead king, grant them power." Hans channeled energy from the fragment and completed the spell. Corrupt the remaining mana in their bodies and remove the fragments of thought. The skeleton being lifted, which was intact just a moment ago, suddenly broke in half. He was slightly embarrassed. "Oh ho, didn't work, huh?" Hans tried it with several other zombies and skeletons, but the results were still unsuccessful. He crossed his arms and pondered, "Well, after a few tries, I'm starting to understand." Hans turned to look at Malcolm's body lying on the ground. "Now then?" He said his intention, should I turn him into a conscious undead and extract information from him? He was hesitant. After trying for a while, he realized disappointedly, what the hell? This old man doesn't have a soul. Pulling open his collar, he saw a strange magical symbol, he guessed. It seems his soul was extracted through this magic circle. It must be a secret method of some hidden organization. Hans threw his body aside. Although he couldn't turn Malcolm into his puppet, he consoled himself. Well, since they performed such a huge operation, it'd be stranger if they didn't have any methods. But it's fine. I can still use his body. When one plan fails, try another, he thought. Since I can't use his body for this, I can use it for another purpose. He had an idea. Perfect. Let's turn him into a high-level undead with both awareness and combat skills. Hans controlled his dark power, chanting in his mind, corrupt the remaining mana in his body. Streams of air entered Malcolm's mouth. Soon, he was nothing more than a skeleton. He continued the process of changing Malcolm, gathering his remaining consciousness and instilling his ego. The process didn't take too long. One of Hans's eyes glowed with dark energy. Malcolm, after being made into a lich, kneeled before Hans, respectfully saying, I await your command. Hans looked happily at his work, smiling. Oh ho, it spoke. Not only is it aware, but it can speak too. Your name is Malcolm. From now on, you shall follow my orders. After waiting a long time without a reaction, he slapped the skeleton hard. Answer me, you moron. The skeleton obediently replied, Yes. Staring intently at the skeleton, Hans thought, he doesn't remember anything about his past anymore, but that doesn't mean his crimes have disappeared too. I will keep attacking him from now on. Ho ho ho! He suddenly called out, Hey, Malcolm! The skeleton startled and replied, Yes. Hans was intrigued by the magic staff that the skeleton was still holding, which made it tremble in fear. That staff looks pretty nice. He took the staff and calmly looked at the pile of white bones. Among them, he spotted a familiar figure, that zombie. He reminisced, it was the young zombie who helped me kill Jeffy. He placed his hand on its head and thought, May you... He used his power to burn the corpses of the zombies and skeletons. Rest in eternal peace with your families, he prayed. On the other side, Han had just finished his fried chicken. He patted his stomach with satisfaction. Ah, so full. Food here is so amazing. He browsed his phone, excitedly checking, Let's see, what's the price of gold today? He remembered the place he got lost into, which was occupied by mages, who had accumulated a great number of treasures. They must have accumulated so much wealth. Back to reality, he tried excitedly. Let's check out the loot. Summon Hans. A skeleton immediately appeared on his dining table, making him jump. Looking at the skeleton in front of him, he quickly shouted, Cancel! Han was sweating, screaming, Cancel summon. The skeleton finally disappeared. He slumped onto the ground, panting. Huff, huff, I thought I was a goner. He scratched his head in confusion. What should I do? I have to summon Hans. Or should I upgrade my unique skill first? Merit Shop. When the shop appeared, Han was surprised by the number of points he had. The number on the screen was over 700,000 points, while upgrading his unique skill only needed 300,000 points. Oh, I got more points than expected. Last time I checked, I only had over 400,000 points. After selecting to upgrade his unique skill, the system announced, Your unique skill has been enhanced. The number of avatars you can summon can be increased. Your mental strength has exceeded the standard. The system also announced that a new skill has been unlocked. You have acquired skill, Serenity. This skill can prevent the mind from being affected by external stimuli and defend against mental attacks. He stuffed the gold bars he had collected into his bag. He then looked at the skeleton that was obediently following his commands. He thought, looking at how I'm still calm despite standing beside Hans, it's not like tranquility. It seems serenity can be applied to my main body too. Han thought smugly. It's strange how I always get the skills I need. Excellent. After finishing up, he threw the bag of gold over his shoulder and said, Let's go sell this gold. The paper bags and backpacks were all filled with gold. People had never seen so much gold before. They were also overwhelmed. Han told the employees at the store, "Please deposit everything into my bank account." After seeing off the wealthy customer, the employees politely bowed, "Thank you very much." He waved encouragingly, "Keep up the good work." On his way home, he remembered Hans. In case of an emergency, he hid Hans in his shadow using dark magic. He was very careful. He had even made Hans wear a mask in case he had to summon him. He breathed out a sigh of relief, getting his spirits back up. I guess I was just overthinking it. He couldn't be optimistic for more than 2 seconds. An explosion occurred at the store he had just left. Han turned back and saw a huge monster standing on the rubble, making a horrible sound. Coo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Along with a masked companion by its side, it said smugly, "We hit the jackpot today." The monster squinted its eyes, grinning. Who would have thought there'd be so much gold in a remote place like this? The companion reminded it, "Let's brag about it later. We gotta run first." It carried its companion on its back, rushing toward Han while saying disdainfully, I know." Seeing the monster had rushed right in front of him, he was a bit angry and realized, "There are villains. Someone reported us. Villains were known as those who used their awakened powers to commit crimes." His pupils shrank. Information related to the villains popped into his head. There were guardians who protected people from them, but in his memories there had been a huge explosion. He had stiffened and just sat there, watching the explosion. The monster threw a punch at Han's face. Han yelled, "Get lost!" The monster and villain stole the bag of gold and ran off. Han was still sitting on the ground, holding his face, thinking, the guardians will probably catch up to them. His body trembled in fear. Unpleasant memories came rushing back. He lost all will to fight. I can't do anything. On the other side, after successfully stealing the gold, the 2 thieves cheered. "Great! Everything is going according to plan. There's still plenty of time. The guardians will take 3 minutes to get here." The villain continued, "We just need to meet up with Portal." Before he could finish, he saw something in the distance. "Wait, isn't she over there?" It was someone lying unconscious on the ground. The monster cried out in horror. Portal. Rushing to her side, the monster worriedly asked, "Portal, wake up. Who did this to you?" The villain noticed something and reminded the monster, "Wolf, look over there." The wolf asked innocently, "Someone, are you a guardian?" The villain said helplessly, "That bastard is not a guardian." The person who had just arrived stretched out his hand and summoned a dark energy sphere. He thought, Han Seong-yun can't do anything. The 2 thieves yelled in fear, "Ah!" Hans appeared with eyes full of murderous intent and thought, but Hans can. 3 figures, 2 men and a woman, dashed through a narrow alleyway. One of them urged, "It's over there, hurry up." They were members of the Korean Repatriated Soldiers Protection Association. The man leading them, resolute, yelled, "You're not going to let him slip away again this time, are you?" But suddenly he stopped, stunned by the scene before him, his face turning pale. The villains they had been chasing were defeated and lying scattered on the ground. His voice full of bewilderment, he asked, "What happened here?" One of them, seeing the unconscious werewolf villain, said, "Someone defeated the villains and disappeared." Then they looked over at the masked man lying nearby. "It hasn't been long, so the person must still be around." The leader ordered the other 2 to search. "Everyone, spread out and look around." However, he didn't notice a dark shadow on the ground right beside him. That dark shadow stealthily rushed away from the building and quickly merged under Seong-hyun's feet. Seong-hyun strolled down the street, swinging his shoulders comfortably. "Ah, that feels good," he said. He acted like nothing had happened, casually putting his hands in his pockets, walking home under the setting sun. Sometimes letting off steam like this isn't such a bad idea. In another world, Heinz, Han Seong-yun's second avatar, whose personal stat was endurance, grinned at something in front of him and shouted, "Yeah!" Heinz looked at the towering city, marveling. Finally, I've arrived. He remembered Malcolm's words from the previous day. Ho ho, a town. If you go east. And he chuckled. Malcolm, that old man wasn't entirely lying, huh? Heinz entered the city gate with great anticipation. Hee. It's finally your turn to explore another world, Heinz. But the desolate and bleak scene inside immediately shattered his fantasy of another world. However, he looked at the empty streets with only leaves blowing and couldn't help but wonder, why is the town so deserted? Heinz looked around everywhere, continuing to mutter, they don't even conduct checks. They're not interested in foreigners either. Suddenly, a shout came from behind him. Are you kidding me? In a small alleyway, several burly men were threatening a young girl. One of them, bald with tattoos, was saying, I warned you already. The girl, frightened, clasped her hands, begging, I'm sorry, if you just give me a little more time. The bald man seemed somewhat appeased, but still continued to threaten. Remember, the two of you have to pay us 2 silver coins in 3 days. If you don't bring enough in 3 days, don't blame me for being ruthless. Heinz glanced at them, thinking, city thugs and an exploited young girl. I'm too tired to deal with them. It's not my problem. While he was thinking about not getting involved, the girl accidentally bumped into him. Then she backed away in a panic, bowing repeatedly. I'm sorry. Seeing this, Heinz spoke up. Hey, kid. He casually asked her, do you know this town well? Because in his mind, he was thinking, well, I need a guide anyway. She was startled by his sudden question, looked up, and asked uncertainly, Yes, who are you? When asked, Heinz immediately showed 2 silver coins on his hand, grinning, Me, I'm your future boss. He saw the girl's eyes light up, fixed on the coins on his hand. Let's discuss the working conditions, shall we? As dusk approached, the girl led him to a large house and introduced it happily. Dadun, this is where I stay best. The girl smiled brightly at him. What do you think? Do you like it here? This girl's name was Diana, and she needed to earn some money to care for her sick younger brother after losing both of their parents. She also said that she had met him after getting into trouble for not having enough tribute money. Heinz, seeing Diana's enthusiasm, generously gave her money and told her, All right, come see me in the morning when you wake up. The girl would become his guide every day for 2 silver coins. Then he went inside, comfortably lying down on the clean single bed, and muttered, Whatever, even if I'm being scammed, I'll just think I'm doing something good. Finally, not wanting to think anymore, he sighed. Time to sleep. At dawn the next day, he woke up groggily, complaining, Ugh, this bed is too hard, I can't sleep. Right at this moment, a sneeze came from outside. Achoo. Heinz went to the window and looked down, surprised. Huh? Again, another sneeze from outside. Achoo. He opened the window and called out to Diana, who was huddled in a corner below. Hey, kid. As soon as she saw him, she smiled brightly, despite her runny nose. Good morning. Seeing Diana like that, Heinz yelled angrily, Why are you waiting for me so early in the morning? After bringing her inside and eating breakfast together, he yawned. Ope. He then told her, Don't wait for me so early in the morning. Breakfast time is not fixed. Diana, with her cheeks puffed out from eating, replied immediately, Yes, sir. Hearing the title, Heinz was annoyed. I told you I'm not your uncle. The girl didn't even bother listening to his correction, and instead pointed at his remaining food, asking, but have you finished eating? Seeing this, Heinz was a little surprised, then said calmly, Huh? Yeah. You can eat more if you're hungry. Diana happily smiled and put half of the bread into her small bag. Thank you. This deserted place with no one on the streets, this town, was called Azanthu. It was a small town located in the far west of the Thalia kingdom. Heinz and Diana walked on the road. Suddenly, he noticed a special drawing on the wall, which looked like a normal medieval town. He touched the symbol, which was like a sharp red jaw on the wall, and said quietly, But this symbol speaks volumes. He moved closer to examine the finger that had touched the symbol. It's not paint, it's blood. While he was sniffing, Diana spoke up from behind him. Really? I didn't know that. Yesterday, She thought for a moment and then asked, "You ate the venison soup, right?" Upon hearing this, Heinz turned around abruptly. "Yeah, how did you know?" Diana smiled brightly, pointing at her nose. "I have a good sense of smell." Looking at her confidence, he thought, "That's interesting. Her sense of smell is so sharp. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a special ability." Then he turned around to ask about the symbol again. "So, what's that symbol?" Diana immediately answered, That's the symbol of an organization called Varkolak that monitors this road." Diana was about to explain further when she suddenly stopped and bumped into Heinz, her face filled with fear. That organization. Heinz didn't see anything in front of him, but Diana's strange behavior just now made him a bit worried. "What's wrong?" Diana, sweating, stammered, "This scent is—" He saw her frowning, smelling a faint scent in the air, and asked urgently, "What do you smell?" Suddenly she turned to him with an overly excited expression and shouted, "It smells like fresh bread. Now that you're here in this town, you have to try it." Heinz was caught off guard, speechless. "Huh?" He saw Diana's excitement and wondered, "Didn't you just eat?" She flinched slightly and replied, "I can eat anything." Right after they left that spot, a faint scent wafted out of the dark alley. In a room deep inside, a person with blood-stained feet was next to a door, with a blood trail leading in from outside. A few days later, Heinz was waiting alone, leaning against a wall. She's never been this late before. Did something happen? At that moment, a man approached him. "Hey, bro." It was the bald man and his companion from the other day, who had threatened Diana. The two of them stood menacingly in front of him. "Let's talk a bit," they said. Looking at the two taller guys, Heinz felt a bit pressured. Is it time? Without saying a word, Heinz just pulled out a wad of coins and offered them. "Please take this." He put on a flattering face and smiled insincerely. "It's just a small sum, but I hope it will help keep the community in order." The two men counted the money, grinning. We can really understand each other, huh?" Hearing this, Heinz thought, "I brought these with me just for moments like this." He saw the tattoo resembling the jaw symbol on the bald man's neck. It was the same symbol he had seen on the wall. Heinz remembered Diana's words from before. "You should never go deep into the alleys. It's best if you leave the city as soon as possible." He frowned. Just how much did they scare that kid? When the two men turned to chat, it caught his attention. The companion turned to ask the bald man, "Boss, why did you grab that kid?" The bald man answered casually, "I don't know, you idiot. We just need to follow orders." Hearing the person mentioned, Heinz was shocked. "That kid? Don't tell me those bastards kidnapped Diana." With that thought, he suddenly shouted, "Wait!" The companion turned around, confused. "Huh?" He clenched his fist, encouraging himself. "Ugh, say it." With these things, motivation is really important. If I'm in danger, I can just cancel the summon. Then, filled with determination, he yelled, "I was just curious about something." At that moment, a questioning voice cut in, "Hey, mister." He ignored the two, who were annoyed by his sudden change, and turned around, surprised to see Diana. "Huh? Diana?" Seeing this, the two men cracked their knuckles and glared menacingly at him, who was sweating profusely. "So, what are you curious about, bro?" Heinz, startled, turned back to them, stuttering, "Oh, I wanted to ask if the amount of coins I gave you was enough, sir." After digging himself into a hole, Heinz was robbed of all his money. They took everything. He threw away the empty bag and turned to yell at Diana, who was covered in resentment. "Hey, kid, you're way past the agreed time. Why weren't you here sooner? Do you know how much money I spent looking for you? No food for you today." But Diana didn't care about food. Her eyes were wet, her face pale and weak. "My younger brother has disappeared." She couldn't hold back any longer, and she reached up to wipe her tears. "He's been getting healthier from the food you gave him, but I can't find him anywhere." At this moment, he remembered what the two men had said. "Boss, why did you grab that kid?" He realized something. Could it be? Those big guys were talking about this kid. Heinz turned to Diana, telling her what he thought, but his words only made her more desperate. It's Varkalak. They probably took your brother. I heard them talking about grabbing some kid. Diana, distraught, clutched her head and screamed, Ah, no! If it's really them, Aaron will die. They only want blood, not money. Hearing that, Heinz asked in confusion, Blood? Why blood? Diana then revealed the deep secret inside the town to him. Along with the sharp-fanged symbol on the wall, a terrifying secret was revealed. It was a food storage for vampires. Snake! Elsewhere, someone was looking down at the scattered bodies on the ground, murmuring, The dark mana smell is so strong. There was an internal conflict because of the fragment of the undead king. How unlucky. I was going to take it after it was complete. The figure, wearing a long cloak, fluttered in the wind, standing on top of the building, bathed in the clear moonlight. Surrounding him was a deadly red aura. Well, I wonder who took it first, but I know where they went. A red-eyed vampire with gorgeous platinum blonde hair smiled confidently. I will catch them soon enough. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, asking back, A vampire? The blood of the people in this town flowed out, their bodies growing cold under the horrified gaze of the vampires. Yes, even the Varkalaks. All organizations were run by vampires. Diana sobbed uncontrollably as she explained everything to him. Even when they tried to flee the city, no one survived. She was so desperate she couldn't stop crying. We just try our best every day, clinging to life any way we can. The two of them stood beside the symbol that brought such nightmarish terror to the people here. Diana slumped to the ground, muttering, Wah! In the end, we'll both be eaten here. Suddenly, Heinz grabbed Diana's cheeks, forcing her to look up, and yelled, Calm down, Diana! He looked her straight in the eye, calmly reassuring her, If that's the case, we don't have much time. Do you know where they might have taken your sister? Diana, surprised, stopped crying and asked, You want to help? But when she saw the resolute look on his face, she was shocked and disbelieving. No way, it's too dangerous. Heinz looked at her with confidence, saying, Don't worry, I'm an expert at dealing with those bastards. Inside, he set a mission for himself. The mission to help this unfortunate girl had begun. In some house, a bald man lavishly threw a few silver coins onto the table. All in. A man with a turban sitting opposite him smiled and asked, Hold on, where did a deadbeat like you get this much money? The bald man smirked. Ha! I lifted it from some idiot outside. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Heinz suddenly kicked the door open. The people inside, still talking, turned in shock. Oh, really? The man in the turban frowned upon seeing Heinz. What? Who are you? Suddenly, the bald man's accomplice, who had robbed him earlier, jumped up and blocked the turban guy. Hold on. He went over and ruffled Heinz's hair playfully. Hey, it's the guy from outside that we conned out of his money. Looks like he came back to donate more. Outside, the guard he'd knocked unconscious by slamming his head into the wall was still out cold. Yet, those inside were oblivious, laughing mockingly with disdain. Ha 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 ha, did you come to share with us? How did you get past the guards? Did you bribe them? Heinz, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly spoke, causing the accomplice to flinch. I won't ask again. Where did you take the kid you were talking about? Heinz quietly hid a knife behind his back. The man still didn't suspect danger, haughtily pointing a finger at Heinz. Are you laughing? Are you crazy? Do you know who you're messing with? Without caring who the guy was, Heinz stabbed him straight through the throat. Ugh! He watched the man writhe in pain, tears welling in his eyes, and said with a grim expression, I know exactly what kind of scum you are, preying on people's families to satisfy your greed. He was filled with disgust and anger as he yelled, Trash! He pulled out the knife, leaving the man to fall to the ground. One down, two more to go. The other two men immediately reacted, jumping back and drawing their weapons. The man in the turban frowned and asked, What the hell is he? The bald man yelled, Do you know where you are? Die! Heinz, unafraid, gritted his teeth and charged with his knife. I have a tough body and quick regeneration. This will be fun, he thought, as he lunged at the bald man with his knife. The bald man managed to block it. Taking advantage of the opening, the man in the turban thrust his knife into Heinz's stomach. Clang. But surprisingly, the blade did no damage, only tearing a small hole in his clothes. He looked up at Heinz, who was now swinging his knife at him, his voice trembling. The hell? Why didn't the blade go through? Heinz slammed the hilt of his knife into the man's head, causing him to cough up blood. Ugh. He looked down at the unconscious man, chuckling to himself. Idiot. This is a boxing suit made in Korea. Behind him, the bald man reappeared, attempting to ambush him. Heinz glanced back and saw the bald man swinging an axe. Ha! Although he couldn't react in time, a shield suddenly appeared, blocking the attack and surprising the bald man. A magic barrier. Immediately after, the bald man was stabbed in the chest by Heinz. How did he get magic items? Ugh! Heinz heard a boom inside his head. He looked down at the magic ring on his belt. Good thing I brought a lot of protective gear. He thought to himself and looked over at the group of men, easily defeated and lying on the ground. Phew. Is that it? I brought way too much gear. I haven't even used half of it. Suddenly, a group of people appeared on the stairs, yelling, "What's all the commotion? Who's that?" Heinz looked at the 5 men with weapons charging at him and thought, "Oh my God, this guy's loud." Outside, under the clear sky, in a seemingly peaceful scene, there were counting voices and screams. 6, 7, 8. After defeating everyone inside the house, he stood there panting. Huff. Why are there so many? He frowned and wiped the blood off his face, unpleased. I don't want to count anymore. I forgot where I was. He let the wounds on his shoulder heal automatically and turned to face one of the larger men and spoke coldly. Hey, big guy. He stepped on the man's face and demanded, Where's the kid, the one from today? The large man, despite being beaten badly, remained stubborn. Kook, you think I'll just tell you? He gritted his teeth and weakly threatened him. You're an outsider, right? I don't know who told you to do this, but you'll regret it. The boss is coming soon. When he sees this, you are done. As soon as he finished speaking, Heinz ruthlessly lifted his leg. His face was cold as he spoke. Thanks for telling me, and... Then he left with those words, accompanied by the man's terrified screams. You should worry about your own life first. Heinz opened the door to a room where a boy was being held. Are you Aaron? The boy cowered and trembled, covering his head. Spare me. Spare me. Heinz gently approached and knelt down, extending his hand in a friendly manner. Don't be scared. I'm here to rescue you, as per your sister's request. The two of them began to talk, unaware that a bat had appeared outside the house. Aaron looked at him suspiciously. You know my sister. Heinz calmly continued, Yes, I'll explain everything when we get out of here. As soon as he said, let's go. The bat landed on the windowsill. A red light exploded behind Heinz, and a chilling voice sent shivers down his spine. Who allowed you to touch my food? From the smoke, a pale hand with sharp nails emerged. Are you messing with my meal? A man with a dark cloak and brown hair appeared before them, staring at Heinz. Are you from the fated contract? He asked. Looking at the man, Heinz thought, a vampire. The vampire continued to inquire, or are you a relative of the child? You know what happens when you oppose us, right? Heinz, sweating, smiled while shielding Aaron. Me? I'm just an outsider who was extorted by your subordinates. I happened to help this kid when I ran into him. Hearing this, the vampire smirked. A swirl of blood appeared in his palm. Is that so? How boring. I prefer to eat children. Blood shot from his palm towards Heinz and Aaron, with him saying, Die. Heinz jumped to protect Aaron from the wave of blood. Careful. After an explosion, the force of the blood blast sent things around them, flying, and also sent Heinz crashing into the wall, causing debris to scatter. When the smoke cleared, Heinz was revealed lying on the ground, still protecting the boy in his arms. A pinkish-red liquid was pooling around them. Heinz sat up, sniffing. The smell of strong liquor. That was a beer keg. Then he turned to shake Aaron. Aaron, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?" He helped the boy to his feet and quickly instructed, "This is your chance. Run outside." At the same time, the vampire caught up to them. "You dodged that." His hand twitched, faster than I thought. "Well, before lunch." He smiled evilly and extended his claws. "This will be a good warm-up." Heinz quickly pushed Aaron away, shouting, "Run, no matter what happens. Don't turn back." After saying that, he held up his sword to block the vampire's powerful attack. He stared at the vampire's claws, several times longer and sharper than normal, and felt a chill run down his spine. Then, the vampire's claws pierced his chest, causing him to yell, "Ah!" Surprisingly, the vampire said, "You..." Looking at his bloodied body, he evaluated him. A tough body and impressive regeneration, I see. Heinz knew this was bad, thinking, the power difference between us is too big. The vampire licked his lips, smiling. "Humans aren't on the menu, but you could be a tasty snack." Heinz looked at him and thought, if he wasn't toying with me, I'd already be dead. He tried to raise his fist, encouraging himself, "But I can..." Before he could do anything, the vampire swiped at him. His arm, that he was raising, was immediately severed. The vampire looked at his shocked face and said happily, "Oh my, I'll have to filter the bones a bit before eating you." He stuck his claws into his chest and lifted him off the ground, causing him to grimace in pain. Then he casually continued, "Your useless resistance ends here." He brought his fangs close to Heinz's neck. "Now you will pay dearly." In this helpless situation, he still tried to think, when there's a power difference. Thinking that, he frowned, determined. From somewhere, a magic ring appeared in his mouth. He clenched his teeth around it. Then, "We'll die together." Immediately, a fire ignited from his body. The vampire's pupils constricted in disbelief. "What is this? A fire magic tool. When did you hide it in your mouth?" Heinz calmly recalled when he'd noticed the liquor spilled everywhere. When he was slammed to the ground, an idea came to him. Then he remembered the magic tools on his side. "I can turn the situation around with this." The vampire, seeing him recklessly charge and pin him down, panicked and yelled, "You're crazy! Are you trying to die with me? If the fire spreads on the floor, we'll both burn!" He swung his claws, slicing through Heinz. "Die!" He laughed victoriously, believing he had successfully killed him. You weak piece of meat." But immediately afterwards, he paid the price by taking a headbutt directly to the head. What? That headbutt helped Heinz throw the vampire to the ground, into the puddle of liquor. Without any hesitation, Heinz pounced. "You said it. Tough body and good regeneration, right? I'm just..." He glared at him, declaring resolutely, "A delicious, chewy snack." The vampire looked at the fire-engulfed Heinz charging towards him and screamed frantically, "No, stop." A tremendous explosion erupted, fire spreading throughout the house, along with his desperate screams, "Stop!" The house was ablaze, engulfed in a sea of flames. Seong-Huin, observing the scene, simply and calmly sighed, "Wow." He had crawled out of the house, his body severely injured, his hands and lower body severed. With a carefree expression, he looked up at the sky and mused, "Unbelievable." He looked at his body, halved, and only smiled coldly. It still survived in this state. Being too tough can be a problem, huh? Seong-Huin looked up at the sky, his eyes as if he had fulfilled his wish. Well, whatever. The burning house began to collapse as he lay there, the mission to help the pitiful girl. He felt relieved that the mission was complete. Outside, Diana was tightly embracing her younger brother, Aaron. Both of them stared at the house, tears streaming down their faces, worried and panicked. A massive explosion occurred, marking the end for the house and Seong-Huin. Diana could only scream helplessly, "Brother?" Both of them could only watch in despair as the house and him were engulfed in flames. A system notification popped up. Avatar Heinz has died. Another notification followed. Avatar respawn time is 7 days. Scene change to a pair of expensive leather shoes being polished to a shine. The owner of the shoes spoke, satisfied. Well, that's settled. The person cleaning the shoes stopped, cheerfully saying, "Oh, yes, indeed." The shoe cleaner was Diana. She was happily seeing her customer off. The nobleman stood up to leave. "Keep the change," he said. She bowed repeatedly, replying happily, "Yes, thank you." She was working hard, wiping away sweat. Phew. Suddenly, a person wearing green clothes appeared behind her. He spoke up, "Can I get my share too?" Upon hearing that she had a customer, she changed her mood. Her eyes brightened up happily as she welcomed him. "Oh, of course, please come in," she said as she invited the customer to sit down. However, after seeing the customer's face, her eyes filled with happiness. She couldn't believe her eyes. "Huh," she exclaimed in joy and delight. "Ah!" The man was Xianghun. Diana screamed out in happiness, "Brother!" She rushed and hugged him tightly. Both of them were filled with happiness that they could meet each other again. As she hugged him, she asked, concerned, "Are you okay?" Xiong heard Diana's question and chuckled, confidently affirming, "Of course I'm fine," he said as he patted the head of the girl, who was teary-eyed, hugging him in happiness. "Do I look like someone who is easily defeated?" Xionghuin showed off confidently, but the truth is always bitter. He confessed the harsh reality. "I lied. This time my avatar really died." He then recalled the time before, in his own place, Xionghuin was trying to do something. It took a whole week for the avatar to respawn. He was really worried about the girl's situation, Diana. She must be very worried. He then came up with a new method. Then, how about trying a new avatar? He said and created a new avatar. Blue light surrounded this new body. After succeeding, he named it, "From now on, you are Heinz." The avatar's information panel appeared. Heinz II. Characteristics, acceleration. Special note, Han Sung-Huin's third avatar. Thinking about that whole process, he felt a little uneasy and worried. "I rushed here with an old avatar." He was still constantly patting Diana's head, comforting her. Although trying to calm himself down, he was still worried about this avatar. "I wonder if she'll realize this is someone else." Contrary to Xionghuin's worries, Diana happily confirmed, "It's definitely him." Her worries from the previous incident were gradually easing now. Now, she could smile happily that her savior was still alive. In Diana's vision, countless blue lights surrounded Xionghuin, just like before. Because of that blue light, she could firmly confirm that this was Xionghuin. The flavor of his soul hadn't changed. After confirming that this was her savior, she looked up at him with a worried expression. "You shouldn't have come here." She cried as she said desperately, "That vampire must be looking for you everywhere." Hearing her concern, he patted her head, reassuring her, "Come on, don't worry." He confidently declared, "I've calculated everything." He had an ace up his sleeve. With the immortal king Hans by his side, vampires were nothing to worry about. A bat was secretly monitoring Xionghuin's house. He began to think of his plans. It seems I have to wait 10 days for the respawn cooldown from another world to end," he thought while opening his system panel. Looking at the system panel, he smiled happily and said, "It'll be longer than I thought, but oh well." Xionghuin hadn't noticed the bat watching him from behind. Bang! The vampire Wirak suddenly appeared behind him, his eyes glowing red, grabbing him tightly by the neck, catching him by surprise. He pushed him forcefully against the wall. Wirak, filled with murderous intent, coldly asked, "You're behind this, aren't you?" His eyes were blazing red as he watched him struggle helplessly. The traces from the forest clearly led here. Xionghuin could only look at him in fear and despair. There was nothing he could do. Right now, he couldn't escape Wirak's grasp. His words frightened him. Vampires. Have they found out already? Wirak continued to interrogate. In the territory of vampires, that was killed. Red light quickly engulfed the room. He smiled menacingly at Xionghuin, continuing as if to confirm his assumptions. There's an outsider here. He was sweating profusely, terrified of the monster in front of him. He had grabbed his neck, and already he couldn't move. Seeing the power in his hand, he could confirm that this guy was also a monster. He let go, his neck showing a clear bruise from where he had been grabbed. Wirak leaned close to his neck, probing him. "But I can't feel any dark magic." And? Seong-Huin didn't dare move, letting him do whatever he wanted. After a moment of observation, he was puzzled. "I don't even smell the blood of our kind." Hearing his conclusions, Seong-Huin acted like he didn't know anything. "What are you talking about?" He had a tight grip on his neck. He could only calmly explain, "I don't understand what you're saying." Hearing this, Wirok's eyes flashed red, smiling mischievously, not believing what he was saying. "Oh, you say you don't know!" He yelled, "You don't know!" and bit down hard on his neck, catching him by surprise and not allowing him to dodge in time. After sucking his blood, he said, "Then, let me ask again." Wirok smiled smugly, wiping the blood from his mouth. He believed he could get Seong-Huin to talk this time. Seong-Huin was being invaded by the vampire toxin, veins showing all over his neck. He could only tremble as he felt the pain. "Now, you can't lie anymore." Wirok's assertion made him disbelieve what he was hearing. What the hell? He began to complain, questioning his misfortune. Why is this happening again? Seong-Huin's body began to change. Fangs began to grow, his eyes slowly turning blood red. A system notification appeared. "Your race has changed to vampire." After turning him into a vampire, he used his power and authority. The atmosphere around him grew tense. "Now, I'll ask you one more time." Seong-Huin was slumped on the ground, sweating all over. A system notification popped up. "Special skill, bloodline blood remnant acquired." Another notification followed. "Skill, fast recovery, changed to regeneration." Wirok used the power of a high-ranking vampire to ask him, "You are truly not involved in the fate reversal contract." Now that he was a vampire, Seong-Huin was just an ant in the hands of his superior. The terrifying power of the vampire radiated out, making him realize, this pressure, it's authority. His mind was going blank, dazedly looking at Wirok, his heart beating fast, his blood screaming to obey the high-ranking vampire. Hearing the questions from his superior, he could only kneel and explain, "No, Sir Wirok, I'm just a traveler." After uttering these sincere but deceitful words, he confidently thought, "I can handle this." Seong-Huin only glanced away, his eyes a little guilty, avoiding eye contact. Inside his body, something unusual was happening. The center of his mind was operating like a filter. It had the function of a water filter, filtering out the instincts of obedience in his bloodstream. Seeing the sincere look on his face, he turned away. It seems I was wrong. At that moment, he let out a sigh of relief. Wirok, having bitten the wrong person, treated him like a servant and took him away. "Now come with me. We have things to do." Seong-Huin took this opportunity to follow his orders and gather more information. "Okay, I'll go along and find out more." Scene changed to a mansion, the Azantu branch headquarters of the Barkoslak clan. Wirok was leading Seong-Huin into the mansion. The lower-ranking vampires around them were greeting them respectfully. "Lord Wirok, it's been a while." Upon seeing the vampires acting like this, he was a bit surprised. He kept observing his surroundings. When the vampires saw Wirok leading Seong-Huin, they looked at him with disdain and contempt. "What's that? Don't tell me that's Lord Wirok's new fledgling." The contemptuous words of the vampires made him feel extremely uncomfortable. They continued to talk and scrutinize him. What were you thinking, taking in such a lowly creature? Suddenly, a female vampire happily rushed out, grabbing his arm. "Hey!" She happily raised the glass of wine in her hand. "It's been a long time since we've had a new fledgling." Her face was flushed as she smiled and said, "I'm Rosilica. What's your name?" Seeing that she was happily welcoming him, he was bewildered and puzzled. "Who is this drunkard?" He quickly replied to her, introducing himself. I'm Heinz. It's nice to meet you." Rosilica noticed the tension on his face and encouraged him, comforting him. "Don't be so stiff. We're all fledglings, aren't we?" she said as she gave him a glass of fresh blood, inviting him generously. "Here, have some fresh blood. Drink up." Seong-Huin looked at the glass of blood in front of him with concern. Even though he didn't want to drink it, he had to do it. "I have to drink it to avoid suspicion." He slowly took a sip. A sensation of pleasure immediately surged through his body. This was the thing he wanted least. Damn, even with the herb of mind, I still have such strong bloodlust. He cautiously drank the entire glass, preventing himself from losing control. If he drank it right away, it would be too risky. He would block the sense of taste and smell before drinking. After finishing, he felt uneasy and tense. Thank you for the blood. Rosalia was looking at him with an extremely amused expression. She moved closer, lifting his chin, playfully teasing, Hey, you're totally my type. If you were human, I would have sucked you dry. He was a little flustered, constantly avoiding her. You keep calling me a fledgling. What is that? Rosalia was surprised upon hearing that. Huh? You really don't know anything about the vampire hierarchy. She started to explain the hierarchy. The lower-ranking vampires, us, fledglings, are like knights among humans. The higher-ranking vampires, the pure-blooded ones like Lord Wirok, are nobles. And there's one type of vampire who is above all, the true-blooded vampires, the heads of the clan, the royalty, and also the blood saints. They're like our faith. Seong-Hwan, hearing her explanation, asked, Faith? She was quick to answer, They're our ancestors, the ones we must absolutely obey. Wirok, from above, slowly stepped forward, tapping on his glass. 2 other people appeared behind him. Attention, everyone. Seong-Hwan looked at him in surprise. After gaining everyone's attention, he began his speech. Now that everyone is here, we shall begin. He continued his speech. The fragment of the immortal king was stolen by the Fate Reversal Covenant. Behind him was a beautiful woman with silver hair, Pirita, a pure-blood vampire. Wirok continued to say, We confirmed it was heading towards this city, but at some point it vanished without a trace. The man behind him listened silently. He was Tiapol, a pure-blood vampire. It's possible it has entered the city. Seong-Hwan, like a little lamb, was clueless. The fragment of the immortal king? Rosalia asked, puzzled. Oh, you don't know about it. She continued her lecture to help him understand. Some dark mages in the nearby village cultivated a fragment of the immortal king. He was shocked and amazed as he realized, recalling the bony figures he had encountered before. So, that group was the Fate Reversal Covenant. Wirok gave his final orders. From today, investigate your assigned areas thoroughly and report immediately if anything suspicious is found. Seong-Hwan and Rosalia were investigating the town in the morning. She kept complaining, going out during the day will burn our skin. Both of them were sweating profusely. He pulled his cloak tighter, tiredly saying, Indeed, I can feel my power depleting under the sunlight. She reassured herself and Seong-Hwan, no matter how tired, even the pure-blood Lady Pirita is out looking. We can't be lazy. She kept complaining, it's so troublesome that the fragment disappeared. It seems useless to move our fragment here. Hearing this, Seong-Hwan stopped in shock and stared at her. He hurriedly asked for more information. Wait, our fragment. His face showed clear tension. You guys also have a fragment of the immortal king here. Rosalia calmly turned and left, confirming his question. Yes, after the dark mages completed cultivating their fragment. She continued, They said they would combine it with our fragment. She wasn't paying attention to Seong-Hwan, who was behind her with a shocked expression. Hearing these words, he felt invigorated. That's so lucky. He clenched his fist, thinking about it. Now, there must be only one pure-blood vampire guarding the fragment. He immediately asked Rosalia, grabbing her shoulder, Where's the fragment? Do you know where it is? Rosalia started laughing as she heard his question. Ha 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 ha. She laughed at Seong-Hwan's ignorance of the vampire ranks. How would a lowly creature like me know? Scene change to Diana's place. She gently replied, I think I know. Seong-Hwan was shocked, not believing his ears. Seeing his bewildered and disbelieving face, she continued to confirm that the fragment of the immortal king, I think I know where it is. Hearing this affirmative statement, Seong-Hwan had to yell in surprise. What? Under the moonlight, a faint light still flickered in the small wooden house. There were voices. You know where the fragments of the immortal king are. At the dining table, where food remained in chipped bowls, Heinz slammed his hand on the table, standing up. Diana casually replied, "Yes, I'm not completely sure because it happened a long time ago, but..." She put a spoonful of food in her mouth, her expression serious as she recounted the story. "About a year ago, I worked as a grave cleaner. Back then, when she was still lowly, wearing torn and dirty clothes, she would stand at the entrance holding a broom, watching people. Every Friday night, members of the Var Kolak organization would come to engage in rituals inside the mausoleum. But every time they went in, an extremely terrifying and evil scent would emanate from within." Heinz, listening, began to ponder. This is worth investigating. Aaron, understanding, turned to Diana. "Ah, so that's why you told me not to go near the mausoleum." Suddenly, Heinz stood up, as if preparing to leave, his words tinged with a hint of darkness. "Thank you for this valuable information. I'll investigate myself. You two, hide well." But suddenly, she reached out and grabbed his hand. "Hey, mister." He turned his head back slightly to look at her. Her worried and judging expression was clear. Diana whispered to him, "But your scent today is a little different. Could it be—" Heinz grinned, revealing his true nature, just as she suspected. White face, red pupils, and fangs. You really can't fool your nose, huh? Yes, that's right. She was so shocked that her mouth fell open, her eyes spinning, unable to say a word. But he comforted her. "Don't worry, this won't affect you." Although she was scared, she held his hand again, expressing her thoughts. "If you're in trouble..." She turned her face away, closing her eyes in embarrassment, but extended her hand forward and spoke louder. "You can drink a little of my blood." Heinz was completely stunned, but because Diana was still a child, she was still afraid and whispered, "But don't overdo it, just a little." As a result, she was flicked on the forehead by him. You sure know how to talk." He ignored what she said and continued to probe. "Enough. Just tell me, where did that terrible smell come from?" Scene changed to the graveyard, the full moon shining brightly in the dark sky. Deep inside some dungeon, a torch flickered, and the atmosphere was barbaric. There was an eerie voice. "Stand up, stand straight, and respond." A few groans echoed, "Ah." A young man was trembling, clutching his arm wound, holding a dull sword, and fearfully looking at someone, who was in turn questioning him. "Do you want to die?" The young man groaned softly. "Kuh." It was him, the vampire Tiapol. He was amused, like he was playing cat and mouse. He beckoned with his hand and invited, "One more time, if you can hit me even once, I'll let you go safely." The young man was so scared that he was shaking all over. While he was waiting, the young man desperately charged with his sword. Receiving the attack, Tiapol clenched his hand, blood staining it red, his face filled with utter contempt. How crude. Tendrils of blood shot out from Tiapol's hand, binding the young man tightly. The tendrils completely engulfed him. Then they pulled him back, roughly. The blood tendrils, like tentacles, began to creep towards his skin as he gritted his teeth in horror. Oh no. And when they pierced his body, making his hair fall out, his skin mutate, and only a final scream remained. No. The end result was a dried-up, mutated corpse, suspended from the web of blood tendrils. Tiapol, seeing this, sighed in boredom. How boring. The floor and everything else were now sticky with blood. Tiapol called for his servant. "Hey, clean up this trash and bring another stronger victim." The subordinate complied, approaching to remove the corpse. "Yes, Lord Tiapol." And as he lowered the bloodied corpse, he suddenly realized and said, "Someone." The bones suddenly moved, and they all charged together. The sound was also very gruesome, Ke. The zombies began to invade. Tiapol, seeing them, roared, "How did these filthy corpses get in here?" He hated them to the core and ordered his subordinates, guards, clean this disgusting thing up now. But these skeletons, with a demonic aura under their feet, were also holding weapons. The first skeleton attacked first, aiming at Tiapol. Dark spikes pierced up and stood tall. Tiapol was hit, his face grimacing. He asked curiously, "What are you?" "A summoner from the Oath of Resistance." He broke free and, confused, asked loudly, "How did you find this place?" At that moment, Hans showed himself, holding a blue flame on one skeleton. The group of skeletons charged at Tiapol again, as if wanting to pounce on him. "Tisk, looks like you're not going to talk." "Fine." He shifted into battle mode, his eyes glowing red like fresh blood. He clenched his fists and blood burst out. He announced loudly, "I'll ask again, after only keeping your head." He powerfully struck the skeletons that Hans was controlling, splitting them in half, their upper halves flying away. Hans clenched a fist, disregarding Tiapol's words. "Keep my head." The skeleton puppets began to reveal weapons that were drills in their mouths, or in their stomachs. Hans was not joking around. "All right, let's test it out." Tiapol was no less formidable. He gritted his teeth, his murderous intent, like he was waiting for prey to tear apart. Outside, at the entrance, there were still fighting between vampire subordinates and skeletons. "Those loyal to Lord Wierach have broken through the outer perimeter. I will go ahead to assist you, Lord Tiapol." Tiapol angrily turned to leave, still shouting, "Good! Concentrate on supporting me. That guy is quite strong." But suddenly, he had to stop. A pain surged through him, and blood sprayed out. He was barely able to say, "Stall for time until reinforcements arrive." He looked back, stunned. Heinz had sunk his teeth into Tiapol's shoulder. "What? How did blood get on me?" As he was eagerly sucking his blood, Tiapol looked over and cursed, "Are you crazy?" A sinister power wormed its way into his fangs. He stood in shock, unable to move. Where did this power come from that was controlling Tiapol's two hands? "This is dark magic. You and that guy." He looked at Hans, who, as a skeleton, was still using dark magic. "You're cooperating. How is that possible? Stop!" He was so horrified that his eyes bulged. His face began to wrinkle and shrink. "Drinking the blood of your own kind. This is an atrocity, corrupting the mind." And then he was dropped by Heinz. Tiapol lost his power and mutated, on the verge of becoming a corpse. No. Heinz stood tall, majestic. A demonic aura surrounded him. He wiped his mouth, the space filled with red blood and black evil. He mocked, "Corrupting the mind. That doesn't affect me." Heinz became corrupted. The power he gained was not insignificant. His eyes were full of sinister wickedness. Those who possess a bloodline will master the skill, blood magic. He only uttered one satisfied sentence, "Good," with this new power. He stood there, powerfully pointing his hand towards where the blood was gathering, arrogantly declaring, "I can break this blood barrier." Hans looked, but calmly said, "But not enough time." Heinz pointed his finger down, his face filled with amusement. "In that case, I'll shatter it." A massive explosion rang out, shattering even in midair. Heinz looked down, excited, as he realized found it. And Hans also saw it, hesitating. "This is..." In the chest, a bizarre purple object, pierced by numerous blood needles. In the middle of the night, it glowed brightly, the second fragment of the immortal king. Hans was also very excited, reaching his hand forward. "Let's do it." The aura emanating from it forced them both to step back. The force blew their clothes. So overwhelming. Hans stood his ground, scrutinizing it, and beginning to calculate. Even when filtering out negative thoughts with mental focus, this fragment still contains too much darkness. Hans focused, his eyes flashing blue from his deep sockets, focusing all the spiritual power of his forms into Hans. At the same time, Heinz's eyes also changed. The aura from the fragment was incredibly strong, spreading outwards in front of everyone. A long, white-haired vampire stood stunned, looking at the purple, demonic aura flying out, hesitating and asking, "What is this fog? Am I too late?" Hans stepped out first. He floated in midair, the evil aura surrounding him. The white-haired guy had seen it. The group of vampires below fired their power towards Hans. There, shoot. Hans didn't dodge, but just let the attacks hit him. He clenched his fist, his eyes flashing blue. Then, a counterattack shot towards the low-ranking vampires, okay? The long, white-haired vampire, shocked to realize that form is... An energy was emanating from the ribcage in that skeleton. The skill, Regeneration, had evolved into a special skill, immortality. Hans changed his face, a powerful force, dangerous and deadly. Confirmed, you have mastered a special skill, Forbidden Knowledge, the Arch-Lich form skill. Seeing the smoke rising, the soldiers exclaimed, "Oh my God, is there a fire?" One of them speculated, "That must be very close to a Xanthu." The smoke, carrying some ash, blew towards the soldiers, making them cough and choke. Cuckoo. One soldier quickly touched some of the ash blowing towards him. Upon seeing a faint blue glow, he said, "Turn back. We're going back to the church immediately. We have to report this to the Saintess." Tuscan said with a serious expression, "This is not ordinary ash." From within the smoke, a figure was approaching, radiating an unusual amount of magical power. Tuscan clearly felt this and hesitated, but this is... Then he yelled out a warning, a sign of the immortal king's revival. Wirok stared straight ahead, his mouth agape in surprise, unable to believe his eyes. Impossible. It's 10 times stronger. The figure approaching was a skeleton, known as Hans, an undead, an archlich. Characteristics. With the power of the immortal king's fragment, Hans's level had increased, and his hidden dark magic had become several times stronger. As long as the origin of dark magic was not destroyed, Hans would continuously regenerate. Not only that, but Hans also possessed the attributes of wicked intellect and forbidden knowledge. In addition to his powerful abilities, Hans had a profound understanding of dark magic and had inherited all its secrets and knowledge. Hans's gaze was sharp, his eyes dangerously glaring as if he wanted to swallow his opponent whole. Hans casually launched an attack, a cloud of magical smoke, making those in front of him dizzy. Wirok and his subordinates frowned in discomfort. "Smoke? Is that to deceive us? What's the plan, Lord Wirok?" The subordinate closest to Wirok spoke up. "First, we need to get out of here and..." But before he could finish his sentence, Hans pulled him into the darkness. Only the echoing sound was left. The terrified scream of his subordinate quickly grabbed Wirok's attention. He whipped his head around, grumbling, "Damn it, could it be?" Before he could decide what to do next, Wirok was pierced by dozens of spikes, blood spraying everywhere. Ugh. A few seconds later, feeling the pain flowing through every cell in his body, Wirok couldn't take it anymore and screamed out in agony. Hans, standing next to him, was greatly amused. "Ah, you're definitely stronger than other purebloods." Hans stood face to face with Wirok, coldly announcing, "But now you are just a bag of blood. This magic suppression. Have you fully absorbed the fragment?" Wirok, feeling resentful, yelled out in despair, "How can you withstand it alone? How?" Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind him, "Because I'm not alone." Not giving Wirok a chance to say another word, Heinz quickly and decisively finished him off. Wirok could only let out a sound, then lay still on the ground. Heinz had successfully leveled up. His body had met the conditions and was now evolving. Special skill, bloodline, low-grade blood, had evolved into pure bloodline. Heinz laughed with pleasure, gently wiping the blood off his mouth, thinking excitedly, "Great, I've become a pureblood. As expected, eating my own kind can make me level up even faster. Just you wait, vampires, I'll eat you all." Rosilica was now crying uncontrollably. "Hick! Lady Parita, what should I do?" She sobbed. "If Lady Parita were here, I wouldn't have been so easily defeated." But Parita thought differently. If even Lord Wirok was defeated, the opponent is not ordinary. Parita shared the same thought as Tuscan. There is still a very strong magical power in the ashes. Our enemy is too overwhelming. She looked up at the sky and told her subordinates, "Moreover, the sun is about to rise. Hurry back to the base and call for reinforcements." On a deserted road, a man was running frantically, the only sound being his labored breathing. Huck, huck, huck. His feet pounded on the ground as he cursed, "Damn it." After running at full speed for a while, the man decided to stop, grabbing the wall to balance himself. He worriedly wondered, "They're not chasing after me anymore, right? Those stupid vampires acting so noble and then getting wiped out in an instant." He lamented, "It's so annoying trusting and following them." Lost in thought, he didn't notice Hans appear beside him. Like the others, he could only let out one scream. Ah. Then he lost his life under Hans's hand. And so, Hans stayed in the city to deal with the remnants of the Varkalak. Meanwhile, Heinz hired a small merchant guild to leave the city with Diana and Aaron. Heinz smiled lightly. He was cooking for the two siblings. "Now, I'll add some pepper." Once he added the pepper, the meal was complete. Heinz excitedly said to the two siblings, "Here's the special steak." Aaron and Diana's eyes brightened, their mouths watering. They exclaimed, "Wow." Both of them eagerly said, "It looks so delicious. Thank you, Uncle." Heinz looked at them and smiled gently, instructing them, "Yeah, eat lots." He watched Aaron and Diana eat happily and thought, perhaps because they left the dangerous city, the kids' faces are much brighter. Suddenly, Heinz asked the siblings, "Your uncle has a shop in East Lapellis, right?" Diana quickly answered, "Yes, he does." She laughed shyly, telling Heinz, but I don't know if he wants us to come." Heinz reassured her, "Don't worry." Heinz was extremely confident and thought, if it doesn't work out, I'll just give them a large subsidy. I like these kids. It's a bit of a shame thinking about having to leave them. In a flash, Heinz felt like he had fallen in love with this place. He smiled gently, his mind filled with many thoughts. How long has it been since I felt this way? I've changed a lot since coming here. Seeing Heinz lost in thought, Diana asked, "Uncle?" Her face showed clear concern. "Are you okay? Or is your blood sugar low?" Hearing her question, Heinz laughed out loud. "Haha, I'm fine. I've already eaten my fill," then thought to himself sheepishly, "I've already dealt with the rest of the vampires in the town." Late at night, while Hans was turning the corpses into undead, in the quiet darkness, Hans's voice commanded decisively, "Quick, go inside." Hans had opened a subspace to bring his undead underlings into. Hans was feeling amused. This subspace is really convenient, like a bottomless bag. While waiting for his subordinates to enter, Hans thought, the attributes of forbidden knowledge and wicked intellect are also synergizing. Perhaps, if I research more, I might be able to open a subspace on Earth as well. At that moment, suddenly, demonic blood aura flew in the air, right near where Hans was standing. The blood aura aimed directly at Hans. It was Ovore. She gritted her teeth and said, "You're still lurking in our city. You underestimate us." Not alone, Ovore brought her entourage with her. "By the way, are you really from the War Declaration Oath?" Her full identity is Ovore Varkoslak, a blood god vampire. Hans heard these words like wind passing by. He figured he might as well just say thanks. Yes, it's true. Although being the immortal king, Hans still maintained his manners and introduced himself. "I'm Hans, from the War Declaration Oath." Ovore glared at him and said, "Liar. Their hideout has already been reduced to ashes by another. Isn't it you who stole the immortal king's fragment and ran away?" But then, she exhaled. The staff in her hand was covered in demonic blood aura. Well, whatever. Ovore charged straight at Hans, a malicious smile on her face. "Either way, you're about to die." And so, a fierce battle broke out. Ovore's quick movements were a bit surprising to Hans. Looking at her intently, Hans thought, every attack of Ovore made Hans struggle to maneuver. That was close. Looking at her, Hans marveled, with this power, even a pure-blood vampire might not be able to win. Moving backwards, Hans accidentally bumped into a magic barrier. He was startled. Ovore stretched out her hands, arrogantly laughing. "You thought I'd easily let you escape. The best blood mages of our clan created this barrier." Hans touched the barrier, thinking, if I try, I can still break it, but I need more time to get used to this new power. Ovore didn't want to let go of Hans. She controlled the demonic blood aura to attack him again, loudly declaring, "I'll tear you to pieces and personally pull out every single one of your bones." Hans had no choice but to say, "Then there's only one way. Remember, I am Hans of the War Declaration Oath." Before disappearing, Hans struck a pose, arrogantly saying to Ovore, "Meeting me is your end. Now I'll retreat, but next time I'll come to find you." Immediately, Hans summoned the villain's mark, dramatically escaping the battle. The mages looked at Hans, stopping his summoning. They looked at each other, puzzled, saying, "What did he just say? I don't know, how dull." Ovore yelled in frustration and disbelief. How could he have escaped our barrier? Suddenly, behind Ovore, a person was hit by an arrow and fell from above, dying instantly. She and the mages turned around in shock. Ovore quickly realized, frowning, and saying, "This is the silver holy arrows of the paladins." A mage, observing the situation from above, yelled out a warning. "Lord Ovore, there's big trouble." Tuscan was leading an army running towards them. "The holy knights are coming. They're surrounding the mausoleum and coming for us." Ovore gnashed her teeth, gritting her words. That damn lich. Ovore's fingers dug tightly into her palms until they bled. Could it be because of this that he stayed in the city, stalling us? That cunning fox, no matter where you run. She yelled silently, "I'll definitely find and kill you, Hans." Back to the present. A peaceful morning, birds chirping happily. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Hans Seong-kyun sighed with relief. Phew, I'm alive. Hans sat up, saying, "I'm telling you, stopping the summoning is cheating." Hans's words were cool and collected, like a representative of good facing evil. "Foo-foo, remember, I am the embodiment of death, the War Declaration Oath, Hans." Han Seong-gyun covered his face in embarrassment, worried he wouldn't be able to yell any louder. Ugh! Seong-gyun got goosebumps from himself, bashfully throwing off his blanket, kicking his pillow, and scolding himself. What the heck kind of lines were those? How embarrassing. Hans, sitting opposite him, also held his head wearily. Seong-gyun questioned himself again. Why did I say that? I must be crazy. But a voice zipped through his mind. Actually, I also feel a little proud. And so, Seong-gyun latched onto that thought, pondering. He remembered, I personally dealt with an entire gang of vicious vampires and saved a weak girl and the whole city. Thinking about it, Seong-hyun grinned, saying that makes me feel like a hero. Relieved, Seong-hyun stretched and said, Okay, a big contribution like that must have accumulated a ton of merit points, right? And so he quickly accessed the merit point shop. The number that appeared before his eyes made Seong-hyun stunned. Huh? The system screen displayed a number that shocked him. 700,000. Merit shop balance. 731,002 merit points. I thought I spent it all on the last upgrade. How can I have so many points? Seong-hyun was skeptical, speculating, could the division of the dark mages and vampires have had an effect? As he thought that, Seong-hyun simply tapped on the screen. I guess so. Should I enhance my unique skill again? He tapped decisively, smiling arrogantly. The system notified him, the limit for summoning bodies has increased. Seong-hyun was delighted. Oh, the number of bodies has increased. Are there any new skills? The notification sounded again. You have acquired a special skill, personality. Seong-hyun smiled excitedly, just as I thought. I wonder if this personality skill is similar to meditation. Let's see. Suddenly, he was startled, as an arrogant laughter sounded. Ha ha. The newly activated skill was a special personality skill, using a body like a vessel containing a person's emotions. Not only that, but the unique skill would develop in the direction that the user needed. Seong-hyun realized, so the system had already planned that I needed this skill. Now I understand why I got it. He recalled his time in the game when he had made friends with strangers. Seong-hyun was extremely happy with that time, and he helped them defeat strong enemies. Returning to reality, Seong-hyun realized, and me, someone who has locked himself in his room for 2 years, I did those things. Actually because, he told himself, either way, for me, everything is just a game, not real. Seong-hyun's shadow moved alone in the darkness of the room, melancholic thoughts flooding his mind. And in reality, I'm still just within these four walls. Seong-yun blamed himself. The reality that I have been avoiding for so long is right in front of me. He gently touched his chest, listening carefully to his inner voice. The loneliness, sadness, and even the anger he suppressed all accumulated into negative emotions. Suddenly, Seong-yun called out, "Hans!" He commanded, "Transfer those stagnant emotions into the body." In the silent room, there was only the soft hum of the emotion transfer process. After the transfer process ended, Seong-yun immediately felt the changes in his body. "I feel so refreshed." But it seemed like those emotions hadn't disappeared. They were just locked away in a drawer. Seong-yun felt worry rise up again. He turned his head slightly. I wonder if Hans is okay after absorbing those emotions. Hans understood what Seong-yun was thinking and quickly reassured him, "Don't worry." Hans also gently placed a hand on his hollow heart and said, "Pain and despair have been my companions in life. Now, they can't touch me anymore." Upon hearing this, Seong-yun had a startled expression. "Huh. No, those are clearly my words, but the tone has changed and I didn't even realize it." Hans chuckled. "Fu. I understand now. It means that a body full of emotions will have its own personality, right?" Seong-yun muttered, "If that's the case." He was about to say something, but he was distracted by the sound that was echoing and exclaimed, "Ah, there was an explosion. What's going on?" Seong-yun dazedly looked at the black smoke rising in the distance. Is there another villain? And in the city again. Things are getting worse. But he quickly dismissed it. Whatever. The guards will take care of it. Besides, it didn't happen right in front of me like last time, and I don't care about this. Noticing Seong-yun's hesitant attitude, Hans immediately spoke. "Do we need a reason to eliminate evil?" Hans and Seong-yun faced each other. Although Hans's face was hidden behind a mask, his will and feelings could still be felt. Seong-yun lowered his head, thinking for a moment. After transferring my negative emotions to Hans, everything became clear. Then he realized, this is just my habit of running away. Seong-yun's will immediately surged. The truth is, I want to destroy evil more than anyone, but I've always made excuses because I don't have enough courage. Hans chimed in. When the world's order turns and this chaos occurs, those lawless individuals will run amok everywhere. Seong-yun put on his mask, declaring, "From now on, I will become their law." The police officers stood in front of the chaos, sighing, "Damn it, how many times has it been now?" The scarred police officer, annoyed, said, "Those bastards are carrying out terrorist attacks again, but why haven't we received any reinforcements?" Seong-yun listened and observed silently. The villains have formed a faction, huh? Unfortunately, everything is settled. Seeing this, he told himself, if I leave empty-handed, that'd be embarrassing. Seong-yun released his magic eyes. Seong-yun ordered them, "Go, become my eyes and ears in the night." He assigned them an important mission, to find the criminals hiding in the dark. In an alley, a man holding a cigarette casually ordered, "Hey, bring me an ashtray." It turned out to be a group of students bullying a classmate. One of the bullies grabbed the weak classmate by the neck, grinning, "Here's your human ashtray." "Ah, ha, ha," the ringleader said gleefully. "You're a good ashtray indeed." In another small house, someone was screaming and begging helplessly, "Please, don't do it." Before the attack of their assailant, a mother and her child hugged each other, crying, "Where can we run to?" The man swung his belt, yelling, "Don't lie!" Right at this moment, the window shattered with a crash. Somewhere else, it seemed to be a store. A thief broke in successfully. Grinning, he quickly stole money, enjoying himself. "Ha ha, I got everything." Seong-yun, remaining in one place, could see everything. "I can see through it all. I will punish those evil pieces of trash." Seong-yun's hand passed through the magic eye, squeezing the thief's neck, smugly saying, "And that punishment will be a nightmare." The abusive husband was also quickly suppressed, experiencing horrifying nightmares. Seong-yun coldly declared, "I will sow fear into your soul. Seongyun continued to punish the bullies. The seeds of evil, remember this day. Seongyun's will was surging. When your evil thoughts burst out again, his hand didn't show any mercy to those evil people. Seongyun was arrogant. You will meet me in the darkness. Wherever Seongyun passed, there were screams. Ah. He smiled contentedly. Okay. I'm starting to get used to this new power. I need more. The more Seongyun did, the more excited he was. I need to continue purging. Standing in the shadows, Seongyun shouted out his ultimate goal. I will cleanse this city. Another one was dealt with by Seongyun, who cried out in pain. Ah! While Seongyun stretched after a night of tireless effort, cleaning up the scum hiding in the darkness. It felt truly satisfying. He looked at the weapon in his hand and thought, this dark eye is quite useful, but it clearly has limitations. Seongyun quickly hit it. When exposed to light, its power weakens and eventually disappears. I need a more effective way to identify the enemy. Seongyun looked back at the path littered with the corpses of the killers. A new worry appeared. I can't just leave these corpses all over the city, so what should I do? While he was lost in thought, the sound of birds chirping loudly overhead drove Seongyun crazy. Those bastards. I should kill them all and turn them into my minions. As soon as he said that, a spark flashed through his head. Seongyun clung to this new idea that had sprung up in his mind. An eye everywhere, invisible, and able to move freely. Seongyun exclaimed, that's it. Seongyun decided to use beast summoning, a type of enslavement magic used to control animals according to one's will, commonly used by dark masters. Seongyun was suddenly perplexed, but he worried and wondered, why doesn't it work on me? Goblin Cave, all that's left. Seongyun hoped it would be amazing if they looked normal on the outside, but had strong infection capabilities. However, if I reduce their magic power to make them look normal, their infection capability will weaken. It's too difficult. Seongyun immediately empathized. Now I understand why programmers grit their teeth when they debug. The final version of infectious enslavement magic, second revision, finally. Seeing no movement, Seongyun muttered, is it done yet? The summoned beasts immediately appeared. Seongyun was a bit impatient. After 3 weeks of continuous research, there's still no significant result. He looked at the bird in the cage and clicked his tongue. Tisk, is this the final test subject? This time, I'm definitely going to succeed. Seeing it moving uneasily, Seongyun scolded it. Damn it, stay still for a moment. He calmed down. Okay, let's start. Adjusting magic power, he used again infectious enslavement magic, final version, second revision. Finally, for real this last time. Seongyun sighed in relief when he saw the promising results. Phew, done. The bird that had just been evolved suddenly flew away. Seongyun was dumbfounded. What? It turned out that it had gathered with its flock. At least it looks normal on the outside. Now, all that's left is to test its infection capability. The bird that had been injected with infectious enslavement had its eyes turn red. It was still eating and drinking as usual. Seongyun was very happy, exclaiming, Great, it's a success. He smiled inwardly. Those who have been infected are becoming my eyes and ears. Seongyun, in the form of Hans, commanded, All right, go, fly out, and... He yelled, Find my enemies! Elsewhere in the forest, Bishop Latius was carefully following the trail of blood. He recalled Hans's words, Remember my name. I am Hans of the Oath of Resistance. I am your death. At this time, Tuscan also appeared. Bishop Latius quickly greeted, You have arrived, Lord Tuscan. Tuscan frowned. Report the situation. After interrogating the remaining ones we captured, it seems that the vampires are not allies of the immortal king's descendants. Latius also chimed in with a serious expression. We need more clues. Even while we're doing this, the immortal king is continuing to grow stronger. Suddenly, the cross in Latius's hand began to spin. He immediately clasped his hands and responded, Yes, Saintus, you have called me. Yes, Bishop Latius, the Saintus told the believers, The presence of the immortal king has been detected again. He is in a cave on a mountain in the northwest region. Latius spoke on behalf of them. Thank you, Saintus. I will not disappoint your expectations. Back in that cave. Hans was sitting inside, smiling smugly. I installed the summoner beasts to send information when they encounter monsters, so now I only have to check if the information is being received correctly. Suddenly, Hans raised his eyes. But he realized that the movements of the beasts on the surface seemed strange, as if they were running away. Hans felt peculiar. The beasts are now also extremely scared. Even if they encountered monsters, they should have sent me information by now. Wait a minute. Could it be? Hans immediately thought, is it humans? Have they encountered humans? A question echoed in his mind. Humans coming to this desolate place. Is it an ambush? Hans was incredibly surprised, unable to believe so many people came and could hide without leaving any traces. The bird that he had just leveled up was hit by an arrow. Tuscan had arrived. He called out, Hans of the Oath of Resistance, your cunning tricks cannot fool us. Tuscan slowly approached. No evil can escape the eyes of God. You cannot hide anymore. He threatened Hans, surrender and accept the Lord's judgment. Hans looked over Tuscan and remarked, that is a knight of the church, the symbol I saw when training in Varkaslak. Hans thought, hesitating, divine power against dark magic, this is troublesome. The church's lackeys, how did they find my place? Tuscan lunged, a thud sound rang out. Seeing Hans hesitate, Tuscan yelled, I won't give you a chance to speak. Tuscan was determined. Don't think you can use your deceitful tongue to trick me? Hans mocked, chuckling, you are as stubborn and short-sighted as you look. If it has come to this, he thought to himself, planning his next moves, I should put on an act and find a way to escape. Tuscan shouted, threatening again, with such clumsy tricks. He arrogantly said, you cannot fool a messenger of God. Tuscan's staff pierced Hans's chest. Hans yelled, Hans, face to face with Tuscan, argued, would you accuse me of punishing evil? Shut up, Tuscan stated bluntly, without any intent to be gentle. From the moment you touched forbidden power, he told Hans directly, you have become just like them. Hans, angered, grumbled uncomfortably. What kind of logic is that? Seeing that too much time had passed, Hans became impatient. All this time. Hans noticed vaguely, something annoying is hindering my magic. As soon as Hans stepped out of the cave, Tuscan immediately yelled, he's appeared, prepare the hymn. The believers of the Saintess immediately began singing the hymn. Hans held his head, grimacing. This song is weakening me. Hans tried to maintain his reason. I can kill them to end it, but I can't harm innocents. Hans thought for a moment. Choir. Right now, Tuscan had teleported behind Hans. Being ambushed, Hans couldn't dodge, yelling, ah! Tuscan yelled as a signal, now's the time. All of Tuscan's army yelled in unison, restrain Hans, you bastard. The believers continued to sing the hymn while pointing their fingers and casting divine chains. The chains struck Hans's bones hard, making a clang sound. Hans blamed himself. I have become too careless. Hans blamed himself, Aya. It seems I was careless with my defense. Can't I move or use magic? Tuscan had successfully made Hans exclaim, these chains with all these annoying people. They've set a trap for me, so I have no way to escape. Hans stared, seemingly slightly helpless. He was also quite impressed with Tuscan. It seems you've put a lot of effort into this to catch me, huh? And as predicted, Tuscan declared resolutely, no evil can escape this prison formation. Have you surrendered yet? Hans responded with a hearty laugh. He. Hans laughed out loud, saying calmly, you think I'd surrender that easily? It seems there's no room for negotiation in this conversation, huh? Hans spoke lightly without any trace of worry or nervousness. I was just joking. I should stop here. If you have the skill, try your best to catch me, Father Lucky of the church. Tuscan gritted his teeth, his hand preparing to strike. I don't know what you're scheming, but... Without hesitating for a second, Tuscan fired his attack. You think I'm stupid enough to just stand by and watch you run? Hans smiled coldly. Useless. No matter how strong your pincer formation is, immediately, Hans, I summon you. Tuscan, stunned, watched Hans escape successfully and unconsciously uttered, he escaped those chains. Unbelievable. Tuscan wondered aloud, just what kind of divine being is that guy? Seong-yun had successfully returned to the real world. Exhausted, Seong-yun lay on his bed, panting. This seems a little complicated. He muttered to himself, there are too many enemies now. Did I cause too much trouble in the places I've been? Seong-yun tried to recall the shadow troops, the oath of defiance. Then he remembered the Varkoslak vampire family. Seong-yun remembered the person he had just fought, Tuscan, and even one of the most powerful forces on the continent, the omnipotent Holy See. Seong-yun suddenly remembered, oh wait, he quickly accessed the system, the merit shop, the reason I've been rewarded with so many merit points. Seong-yun stared blankly at the screen. Don't tell me it's... He concluded, that's right, it's none other than precisely because I've been going around making enemies all over the continent. Seong-yun clenched his fist, determined. I should think about that issue more. For now, I'll focus on the plan I've already made. At night, Seong-yun once again put on his mask. In the darkness, he moved silently. Now, it's time to reap the rewards of my research. Seong-yun looked at the cats that had been upgraded into servants and pondered. A simple principle is that controlled creatures will distribute dark magic power to other individuals when they make contact. He was extremely proud of his plan. Just with this simple step, my eyes and ears are now covering a vast area, and it will continue to expand. Seong-yun was very amused. It's only a matter of time before it covers every corner of Seoul. Seong-yun's eyes shone brightly. He looked at the bright eyes of the cats and thought, they're here, huh? Seong-yun immediately followed the first signal. In an apartment, a scream rang out in agony. Please, sir, please spare me. The woman trembled as she begged, please, sir, I will do anything you want if you spare me. On the street, footsteps walked slowly. The woman quickly called out for help. Handsome sir, wearing glasses, please help me. This person is kidnapping me. Seeing the young man leave without looking back, the woman sobbed, Sir, please don't go. Please, I beg you. The killer yanked her head back. Ah, useless. He held a knife to her neck, smugly saying, Just scream freely until your throat turns inside out. Scream as much as you like. He said arrogantly, Because of my ability, your screams in torment, I'm the only one who can see and hear. The killer was relaxed, comfortably provoking the pitiful woman. Hey! Scream louder. Your voice is cute. Why did you stop? The killer swung his knife up, licking his lips and saying loudly, You'll be honored to be third place in my collection of achievements. The window shattered with a loud crash. The killer was stunned, asking, What was that? Seong-yun coldly asked, Your skill is... He speculated, sound suppression and invisibility, right? Then Seong-yun calmly said to him, Too bad, I'm immune. Your disgusting chain of crimes ends here. The killer quickly grabbed the woman as a hostage. You? Who the hell are you? Are you a bodyguard? How did you get in here? He threatened, If you come any closer, I'll kill this girl. Seong-yun calmly asked, Really? In a blink of an eye, the woman was safely in Seong-yun's arms. So now what? What are you going to do now? The killer was dumbfounded, muttering, A returnee. The killer was offended, annoyed, and huffily said, How dare you steal my prey? Then I'll just kill both you and that girl so we can make it a pair. He charged forward with his knife raised high, yelling, Ah! Suddenly, his arm was immobilized. Seong-yun calmly bound the killer with a magic rope. Based on the way you're talking, it seems like this isn't your first time doing this. Seong-yun stepped forward, saying in a monotone, Or should I check? His hand touched the killer's head, and he loudly recited an incantation, the undead technique, the cries of the underworld. The killer's memories appeared, with his unfortunate victims crying out tragically. Please, sir. Please spare me. A serial killer, huh? That's enough. Seong-yun said lightly, I will grant you the death sentence then. The killer was severely injured, blood splattering everywhere. He cried out in pain. Ah! Xiong was still not satisfied. He said calmly, even death can be considered too merciful a punishment for you. The floor was now covered in the killer's blood. In the silent space, only Xiong monotone voice could be heard. But I also need a few undead commanders on Earth. So on this occasion, I'll turn you into one, shall I? He slowly operated a cruel method by draining all the blood out of the body. I didn't expect that I would make one this early. The killer immediately became a mid-grade undead, a ghast. Grr. Xiong opened a subspace and commanded the ghast, "Go inside. You'll be useful later." He turned to look at the woman lying still on the ground. And as for this one, should I clean up the mess before leaving or not? And so, another night passed. Early in the morning, also at that house, the police had surrounded the area and people were rushing out to watch. Standing inside the room was the Supernatural Crime Prevention Unit's team leader, Park Hanschel. The police officer with him reported, "Hey, team leader, we've recovered some video footage of the scene. It seems like it's that serial killer we haven't been able to catch for a while." Hanschel, with a lollipop in his mouth, calmly asked, "And the person who killed that serial killer seems to be a returnee?" "Yes, that's right. We couldn't find any bodies, but a large amount of dark magic was detected on the ground." The other police officer expressed his opinion. "At least it's good that this piece of scum, who deserved to die, is really dead." The case files of the crimes that the serial killer committed were a nightmare. Hearing him say that, Hanschel's face darkened. "Hey, are you joking with me?" Hanschel pointed to the wall that Xiong had painted last night with the serial killer's blood. He calmly analyzed for his colleague. They're drowning in power and self-proclaiming themselves as heroes, thinking it's okay. Those types are the most dangerous. Do they think the law is just for show? Hanschel didn't see it as an act of justice, taking the power to execute people for themselves. Hanschel said through gritted teeth, "Who the hell is this lunatic?" He was determined. I want to see his face, even just once. Inside an office, a staff member said, "Branch Director, this office is called the South Seoul Branch of the Korean Returnee Association." The staff member gently pushed the door open and stepped in. "Excuse me." Seeing Ji-yoon slumped over her desk, the secretary rubbed her head, sighing wearily. Not again. She lightly tapped the desk a few times. "Branch Director Yoon Ji-yoon, wake up. There's something important." Ji-yoon said listlessly, "What time is it? What's the matter?" The staff member reported, "The Ability Management Department has sent a request for cooperation." Ji-yoon looked carefully at the report and replied, "The case involving the arrest of the 3 jewel thieves. Is that case related to the recent murders as well?" Ji-yoon pictured Xiong wearing a mask, a user of dark magic, wearing a long cloak and a haho mask. Thinking about that, Ji-yoon sighed, leaning back. The security situation is getting worse and worse, but they're still refusing to give us more support. They want to give this case to him as well." The secretary, hearing this, exclaimed, "What? That bastard is a murderer. Don't say such things." Ji-yoon flew into a rage, yelling, "That's what I mean. He has skills, so if we chain him up properly, he'll become a perfect dog." The secretary, even more confused, said, "Huh? Can't we just make him a bodyguard? I know you're overwhelmed with work right now, but still." Not knowing who was the boss and who was the employee, the secretary said firmly, "Stop talking nonsense and keep working. Can't you see that the documents have piled up?" Ji-yoon, upon hearing this, screamed like she was about to die. I want to beat all those damn villains to a pulp." Back in his apartment, Xiong was feeling incredibly refreshed. He did his familiar stretching motion. Beating those villains is so refreshing. But actually, Xiong made a clear distinction. With regular villains, he reminded himself, unless they are a serial killer or something, I usually just stop at putting a fear curse on them and giving them appropriate punishment. That's merciful enough, right? Standing by the window, he said to himself, "It seems I'll have to deal with those guys soon. Those criminal organizations that are causing terrorist attacks over there." Looking down at the street, at the people who were laughing and smiling happily, Xiong felt relieved. Well, now, Since things here are almost settled, should I start paying attention to that to deaths? Other world. In the game, a strange man was crying pitifully. He called out loudly, "Diana, Aaron." It seemed that this was the uncle that Heinz had asked the siblings about. He hugged the two children tightly, sobbing. "You've gone through so much. You've been so hard-working." The two children were also sniffing and crying, "Ah, no, we're okay, sniff, sniff, ah, uncle." Heinz, seeing this, smiled lightly, feeling relieved. Seeing that he seems like a good person makes me feel relieved. He smiled to himself. If he dared to act suspicious, I was even thinking of threatening him. But he seems trustworthy. The siblings' uncle bowed deeply, thanking them repeatedly. "Thank you so much for bringing the children all the way here." Heinz modestly said, "It's nothing. I just did what I should do." Diana gently stepped forward, "Sir. During all this time, really." She was emotional and thoughtful, running to hug Heinz tightly. "Thank you so much. Hick." Heinz patted the girl's head with a warm smile. "Come on, it's not like we'll never see each other again. I'll visit often. But remember to behave well and grow up healthy, okay?" Diana still hadn't stopped crying. She said through her sobs, "Sir, I am a little worried because I feel like your personality is changing more and more, but you're truly a good person. I feel so relieved." Heinz was puzzled hearing the girl's remarks about him. He said, "You think my personality has changed?" He wondered, is it because of the effects of the persona? Heinz pondered. With Hans, it presented a combination of negative emotions and a desire for recognition, in other words, a characteristic of wanting attention. Meanwhile, with Heinz II, who was focused on infiltration and deception, it seemed that he had a very calm personality. Diana quickly asked, "So, sir, where are you going now?" He answered the girl, "Me." Heinz slightly looked up at the sky where the cross was illuminated by the sunlight. He replied, daydreaming, "I'll take this opportunity to go on a pilgrimage." At the capital of the kingdom of Tailia Thalaria. Heinz slowly strolled down the street thinking, "There's only one reason for me coming here." The thought was etched in his mind. The capital of Thalaria is the headquarters of the goddess church, and it is home to the largest temples in this land. Heinz was alone in a small alley. "Okay, with this, no one will follow me." Heinz began to use magic, fourth avatar, summon avatar, Heinrich. Immediately, the incantation was activated, Heinrich. Shared characteristics, meditation, persona, super regeneration, serenity. In addition, this form also had a unique characteristic. Warrior spirit gains additional skills and experience through training and combat. Heinz immediately ordered, "Taking a walk around a holy nation with a vampire body is beginning to reach its limit. Here, take this. Now then, let's go get breakfast." Inside the church, the priest called out one after another, "Next believer, please step forward." A bishop was shocked when he saw a bag of gold coins placed in front of him. He asked hesitantly, "What? How much is this total?" Heinrich replied clearly, "This is all of my fortune." He acted his part very well, expressing reverence and respect. "I want to offer everything to the goddess and become a holy knight to serve under her command." However, in his mind he was having other thoughts. "Until now, my avatars were an undead, a dark mage, and a vampire. They were all children of the night. However, Heinz was determined, this time my avatar will become a holy knight, wielding a holy sword, respected by the world, a holy knight of light." The bishop slammed his hand on the table, yelling, "All right." The bishop's eyes lit up. He praised him. "You are indeed a spirited young man. I, as a guide, will train you to become a wonderful holy knight." At this time, the old bishop next to him interrupted, "Wait a moment, Lord Marco. No matter how much he has donated, we cannot make someone whose identity is unconfirmed a holy knight." Marco laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, don't worry, Sir Registrar. The cruel nature will reveal itself during the holy knight training. So, young man, are you confident that you'll expose your true nature?" Heinrich replied in a confident and dignified manner, "Of course." Xiangyun was now panting from exhaustion. Water. I'm so thirsty. Huff huff. It turned out he was training. Seeing a large metal ball rolling toward his face with the speed of light, he exclaimed in frustration, "What the hell was that? This is insane!" Xiangyun struggled to use his sturdy arms to block the ball. Sweat poured down. Xiangyun thought, "It's been a month since I started this damn Holy Knight training." At first I thought the Holy Knights were a noble and cool group. Xiangyun was stunned to realize the truth, but it turns out they are just a bunch of muscle-bound perverts. Inside the training area, cheers rang out. "Brother, one more time, go, 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 hiya." Xiangyun was also trying his best to train. A trainer approached, scolding, "Recruit number 121, you're losing focus. Have you forgotten the rule that you cannot stop praying while training?" Being yelled at by the trainer in his ear, "Okay, focus and pray again now." The recruit had no choice but to reply, "Yes, sir." He used all his strength to pray, "Ha, O goddess," while the trainer was constantly urging him on. More focus. The trainer said clearly, "When training, focus on praying and recover your broken body." Surprisingly, the prayer had an effect. The recruit immediately lifted the steel ball, weighing over 10 tons. The trainer was very satisfied. "Oh goddess, good. One more." Xiangyun, having seen this situation from beginning to end, was also amazed. In extreme conditions, praying repeatedly will strengthen faith and increase holy power. I have to admit it's incredibly effective. On the other side, someone was training by letting a small steel ball full of spikes hit his back. Without the slightest pain, the person even declared, "My pay is awesome today. Keep going, hit harder." The strong arms with bulging muscles even caught the small, spiked iron ball without any screaming. They were all training vigorously. Everyone was trying to pray to increase their holy power. Hi-ho, O goddess. My faith is becoming stronger. It was only Xiangyun who was dumbfounded at this scene. Do they really have to train this perversely? At this moment, the trainer on the upper floor called out loudly, "Marco, the recruit that you brought here is no joke, huh?" Marco replied briefly, "Huh." Xiangyun, upon hearing his name, shuddered slightly. Even before the baptism ceremony, he could lift that much. His shoulders and lower body have become so strong that you can barely recognize him. The trainer praised him. "I can't wait to see how much he'll improve after the baptism ceremony." Upon hearing this, Xiangyun was startled. His whole body shrunk. No. Why are they so detailed when looking at my body? It's so uncomfortable. I don't want these perverts to notice me. Xiangyun continued to train hard, sweating profusely every day, panting heavily. He thought, "It's been 3 months since I started this Holy Knight training. If I didn't have the warrior spirit and super regeneration skills, I would have been eliminated long ago." Heinrich was a bit worried. My body and physical strength have improved, but the most annoying thing here is... Someone came and patted Heinrich's shoulder. "Heinrich, if you finished your lower body training." It was the trainer Marco. He said, "Why don't we move on to chest exercises?" Before Heinrich could refuse, another trainer stepped in. "Hey, no. On a day like this, we should train back muscles. You agree, right?" Seeing the 2 trainers in front of him trying hard to tempt him, Heinrich was now trembling in fear. He could only mutter 2 words, You, while cursing inwardly, "Get lost, you muscle-obsessed perverts." A peaceful morning began a new day, and someone was sighing heavily. "Ha?" It was Heinrich, talking to his friend. "I'm going crazy. Not a single day goes by where they don't call me to train with them." His friend chuckled, saying, "Well, maybe the seniors have high expectations for you." While Heinrich and his friend were sitting on a bench resting, they saw a crowd appear. "They're here. Ah, it's really them." Appearing was Bishop Latius and the Knight Tuscan. The 2 entered to the cheers of the crowd. The Grand Bishop of the main temple and Lord Tuscan. His friend turned to Heinrich and said, "I heard they went on a campaign with the Holy Knights and Crusaders, but it seems they've returned." Heinrich was startled. That person... Heinrich vaguely realized, isn't that the knight who stabbed Hans with a sword? He went on a campaign and has now returned. Don't tell me. Heinrich looked at the knight, wondering, Could it be that they've been looking for Hans all this time? The old bishop stood in front of the students and announced, "Students, the reason you have been summoned today is to hold the baptism ceremony for those who have met the requirements." He continued, "Although it is earlier than usual, due to the specific situation, the schedule of the ceremony has been moved forward. So please understand." He looked at the list. "So those students whose names are called, please step forward." His training buddy turned to Heinrich, saying, "Why are they holding an event that only happens once every 6 months so soon?" Heinrich thought, "Well, I can guess." Heinrich thought of Hans. The Holy Knight forces urgently needed reinforcements to hunt down the descendants of the immortal king. Thinking of that, Heinrich clenched his fist and smiled smugly. "Either way, this is a perfect opportunity for me to save some time. Should I use this opportunity to experiment?" He was hesitant. "The new application of my persona and meditation skills." The old bishop was still calling out names. "Max Weron." He continued, "Will you offer everything to the Lord and live under the name of a holy knight?" The student whose name was called replied, "I swear, great high priest." Then he began the ceremony. Those who received the baptism had to sacrifice all their mana to God, rendering them unable to use magic. In return, God would bless them, granting them a large amount of holy power. It was considered a meaningful privilege. The blessings received varied significantly, and the biggest factor in determining the amount of blessing was the most important factor: faith in God. The purer and more sincere one's faith, without any lies or doubts, the stronger the holy knight they would naturally become. The great high priest called out again, "Student Heinrich." Heinrich stepped forward, still thinking, "This is exactly the reason." He stepped forward with a confident smile. "This is exactly the reason I chose to become a holy knight." But he was happy for only a few seconds before worrying again. "Up until now, I've only used meditation to suppress external stimuli or to control my own emotions. Fortunately, from this, Heinrich realized, but I've realized that the opposite application is also possible. This reverse application might stimulate his persona skill. I'll inject feelings of faith into Heinrich." During the baptism process, Heinrich was still lost in thought, and when the great high priest withdrew his mana, he had planned everything very carefully. When the mana is withdrawn, by using meditation, I'll filter out emotions such as distrust and push the mana out of myself. Then the mana, having been purged, will become pure, without a single trace of doubt, only faith and pure mana. Heinrich imagined all three, along with Heinz and Hans, combining their power and completely absorbing the blessing to the maximum degree. Hope was sown in his mind. I'll focus the spiritual power of all my bodies into Heinrich. The great high priest was overwhelmed by the power that Heinrich was radiating. He gently closed his eyes. This amount of holy power. The light radiating from Heinrich's body forced everyone to step back. The students were all in a hubbub. "Unbelievable! Look at that!" They exclaimed, "Holy power! It's even reaching the top of the statue." A hand patted Heinrich's shoulder. "Heinrich, no, Lord Heinrich." The great high priest smiled kindly. "You have been baptized, and it's unbelievable that you've reached this level. In fact, you're at the priest level already. Such profound faith is truly impressive." The great high priest instructed, "From now on, please continue to strive." Heinrich smiled brightly. "Thank you, sir." At this moment, a new notification appeared. You have acquired the skill Holy Purification. Holy Purification enhances the potential of your bodies and allows for more efficient sharing of spiritual power between individuals. Heinrich looked at the light emitting from his hand. Is this the limit of holy power? Well, at least it's good that I got this much. I was worried whether the fabricated faith created through this trick would work. Heinrich smiled faintly. Even so, it doesn't seem to be completely effective. He looked at the cross in front of him and thought, the God of this temple is more of a system than a divine being with a personality. He remembered when he had slightly bowed his head to let the priest place his hand on his head, but when I had an awakening beforehand, If I had to express the vague feeling I had seen with human emotions, Heinrich speculated it was an emotion that was close to curiosity. He looked up at the statue in front of him, happily. Following, is that what it means? This power should only be used for good. And so, their baptism ceremony ended. A sigh was heard. Ha! Frustrating. Inside a room, on a table that had been spread with a map, the bishop and knight were discussing with each other. Latius sighed. We haven't been able to find any evidence of the immortal king's descendants for the past few months. I no longer have the face to face the saintess. The knight also worriedly added, Moreover, it will probably be difficult to ask for more support from the kingdom of Thalia. It's possible that a vampire organization hiding in the kingdom is involved in this. The knight also speculated, in the process of pursuing Hans, the conflict with the vampire clan and the unwavering oath was too great. The bishop also worriedly expressed, because the execution team has not made any progress, political pressure from the kingdom of Thalia is increasing, and they are probably using that as leverage. At this point, the bishop himself felt exhausted. Ha! The execution team will be disbanded. Lord Tuscan, call everyone back to the capital. The knight obeyed. Yes, I understand. Stepping out of the door, Tuscan was still thinking, we're being surrounded on all sides, and reinforcements are completely insufficient. He stood silently in the corridor of the church, sighing in frustration. How should I solve this problem? Suddenly, a scream, "Ah!" startled the knight. It turned out that the students were practicing hard. Tuscan looked at them and thought, they are the newly appointed holy knights, right? Wait. The friend who was always with Heinrich suddenly yelled, there's an opening. Heinrich also immediately dodged as warned, but it was too late. A little blood had splattered out. But at this moment, Heinrich also took the opportunity to jab his elbow straight into his opponent's face. The referee announced, Heinrich wins. And so, Heinrich received a new reward. The individual has achieved enlightenment through repeated training. You have received the Skill Crusader French. He thought to himself, still looking serious, combining super regeneration with holy power. Number 10's wound seemed severe as well. His friend rushed over, wondering, you purposely let yourself get hit, didn't you? Number 10 laughed, nodding in agreement. Taking hits to get an opening, that's Number 10's fighting style. But in his heart, Number 10 was still uneasy. This is still not enough. To develop further, I need a new change. Behind them, a voice rang out. Clearly, in terms of holy power, you're at the level of a trainer or a high-ranking holy knight. Tuscan had arrived in front of Number 10, but you still lack the experience to become a holy knight. His sudden appearance surprised the student, Lord Holy Knight Tuscan. Tuscan was face-to-face with Number 10. You probably feel this more clearly than anyone else. He looked at Number 10 with hopeful and trusting eyes and offered, I'll make you stronger. Would you like to come with me to Rosalia Hall? Heinrich pointed at himself, wondering, yes, I'm going to Rosalia Hall. Tuscan replied, that's right, is there a problem? He immediately explained, no, it's not that. Of course I want to go there, but... Tuscan quickly said, then follow me, we'll depart immediately. Heinrich, hurrying to catch up, said, could you give me a little time to pack my things? Tuscan, still walking, said, let someone else handle it later. Tuscan placed his hand on Heinrich's shoulder, hurrying him along. I understand that this sudden call is overwhelming. I'll explain everything in detail after we get there. Heinrich, with a confused look on his face, still replied, understood. The two teleported to the front of a magnificent and splendid castle. Heinrich, his face a mix of surprise and curiosity, thought, this is the great Rosalia Hall. As he walked and looked around, he thought, the largest sanctuary of the Holy Church, located right at the center of the continent. Inside, the castle was even more magnificent and splendid. In the middle was a large white statue. Heinrich and Tuscan bowed respectfully. He thought, where the Pope and the Saintess reside, the main center of the church. The Saintess, with a cheerful face, said, welcome, Lord Tuscan and Lord Heinrich. You must be tired after such a long journey. Tuscan respectfully replied, "Thank you, Saintess." Heinrich was still lost in thought. "I'm inside the great Rosalia Hall, where the Saintess resides." He smiled slyly and calculated, "This is the perfect place to quickly grow stronger. Here, I'll become a well-known holy knight. Steadily grow stronger in the light, Heinrich." Back in the modern world, Heinz was wearing his mask, sitting and pondering. "This dirty work. I'll take care of it in silence." His phone screen showed the latest news about the Shadow Hunter. His hand kept scrolling, then he clicked his tongue. Heinz whispered, "So I've accidentally become famous. Although most of the remnants of the human trafficking organization have been destroyed, but..." He then thought again. There is something strange here. What is this so-called Judgment Association that the villains kept mentioning? Memories suddenly flooded back, images of the association members holding guns pointing at him. Kill that bastard. If you mess up, the Judgment Association won't let you off. Thinking about this, Heinz became more certain. I'll find out if I continue to eliminate them. Under the moonlight, Heinz stood up and stretched, sighing, I guess I'll find out if I keep eliminating them. Now then, I'll deal with the income from this case later, he said and walked into the crowded streets. He adjusted his mask higher and thought, if a Haho mask starts trading large quantities of high-value goods from unknown sources while being hunted, that's the perfect way to become suspect number one. I need a discreet place to conduct these transactions. An employee of Deep Sea Gameland said, "Welcome." His boss was still engrossed in reading a book, not paying attention to the bag Heinz had handed him, so Heinz had to raise his voice. "I want to sell something." His boss, still indifferent, said, "What do you think this is? A pawn shop. Whatever you bring, I'm not interested. Go away." He replied bluntly, "Is that so? I heard this place likes things like this." He then tilted the bag, pouring it down so that gold coins spilled out. His boss picked up a gold coin to examine it. "This is the emblem of the human trafficking syndicate. I heard they were wiped out by a madman wearing a mask." Heinz continued, "How about this? Are you interested now?" His boss's face turned into a sinister and threatening smile. "Go to the back door. Don't wander around." Heinz opened the door and a voice said, "Welcome." An employee wearing a mask asked, "So, do you want to sell something?" He just said yes. He picked up the bag. "Is it possible to pay with something other than money?" The employee wearing the mask picked up a gold coin and said, "You mean pay with goods? What do you want?" Heinz held up one finger. His request was extremely simple: a first prize winning lottery ticket as quickly as possible. Heinz thought, if it can't be used, then exchanging it for money is useless. I need a legitimate source of income for a man named Han Seong-yoon. If it's a lottery ticket, it will be clean without any traces. The employee said, "A lottery ticket. The commission will be quite high. Is that okay?" He replied, "Of course. How much can you get?" The employee wearing the mask pointed at the screen, explaining, "There's a ticket here worth 6.1 billion won. The exchange period is still 4 months." Heinz excitedly said, "Great. Get me 2 more tickets like that." The employee then held out his hand and said, "What? Then the money you brought today is not enough." He said, "Don't worry, I have more goods." From his spatial pouch, he pulled out 3 gold bars. "Is this enough?" The employee was stunned, stammering, "This is..." Then, the employee grabbed his hand, curiously. "A spatial storage device. Who are you anyway? This isn't ordinary stuff. Where did you get it?" Heinz tried to pull his hand away from the employee's hand. "Hey!" The employee, startled, looked up. "Yes." Heinz, with an angry face, said through gritted teeth, "I didn't come here to chat with you. Quickly finish the transaction, okay?" The employee was terrified. "I'm sorry," he said. "Finish quickly." The employee was sweating profusely, thinking, the faint smell of blood I felt earlier wasn't just my imagination. Heinz whispered into the employee's ear, "Good. Let's continue this clean transaction. From now on, we will understand each other better." Heinz walked out holding 3 lottery tickets in his hand, excitedly saying, "I've achieved my dream of winning the lottery jackpot like this." He sat on the sidewalk, happily jumping up and down. What should I buy? More importantly, it would be nice to have a few subordinates I could order around to do things like this. Going back and forth is so annoying. Well, let's just see this as a chance to enjoy the nightlife, Heinz thought, but it's getting crowded again. Maybe it's because of the rumors. It feels a bit satisfying that I'm the one making peace a reality. Suddenly, a face leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Where did you come from?" Heinz was startled and turned around, thinking, "Who's that?" They were standing behind me, and I didn't even notice. He replied, Hey, don't be so startled. I just wanted to chat a little." Heinz exclaimed in surprise, "What?" He pointed at the person. "What the heck are you talking about, you creepy bastard? Sneaking up behind someone and sniffing them. What are you plotting?" He said, "Wait, are you a vampire?" "I am too," he smiled, revealing sharp fangs. "What a coincidence. I'm one too. I'm a rank 6 vampire from the Dotmere dimension." Heinz wondered, "What's your name? When did you come back to Earth?" He was trying to speculate. Another dimension-traveling vampire. What kind of game is this? I need to make up something to get out of here. He introduced himself. "My name is Heinz. I haven't been back on Earth for long." Heinz worried. Why did I reply to him? Is it mind control? Gamma replied, "Oh, of course, you're just a rookie who recently came back to Earth. Let me formally introduce myself. I'm Gamma, from the Blood Covenant organization. It's where all the vampires on Earth gather. My job is to recruit vampires like you who have just returned to Earth." He handed him a business card. Heinz took the business card and wondered, there really is such an organization? Gamma sighed. "If you want to survive, we should cooperate, right? There's no other choice." He also casually asked, "What was that rank you mentioned earlier?" Gamma mocked, "You're starting to get interested, huh?" Gamma offered the car keys, inviting him. "Instead of talking out here, why don't you see for yourself?" Heinz looked at the red car parked across the street and exclaimed, "Oh?" Heinz sat in the car excitedly. "Okay, lead the way." A woman who had been watching them from afar spoke into a walkie-talkie, headquarters. The woman was Rin Soran, reporting to the organization. "The target is moving according to the plan. I'm following him." He drove the red car to a dark place with graffiti on the walls and invited him in. Gamma led Han Seong-yoon into a room, explaining to him as they walked, "This is where each vampire has a vampire coefficient that determines their level of power." As he walked through the room and listened to him, he said, "The first thing you see are skulls and vials of blood. We measure the coefficient through the Blood Covenant and quantify it into levels, and..." Gamma led Hans into another room, where several figures in black robes, seemingly mages, were waiting for them, with a magic circle and symbols on the ground, exuding an aura of mystery and spirituality. Seeing the vampire's surprised and bewildered expression, he introduced, "Through this magic circle, you can measure your vampire coefficient level." Hans became even more fearful at his words, his face turning pale. A magic circle. That's terrifying. Under the dim light of the candles, Gamma confidently urged him, in contrast to his nervousness, his sweat-soaked fear. "What are you doing? Hurry up and step in. Tisk. If the situation gets dangerous, I can cancel the summoning." Under the dim yellow light of the candle, a skull appeared mysteriously, and the atmosphere around him became cold and stiflingly frightening. "Wait, this skull seems to have traces of dark magic." The vampire turned back and accidentally caught Gamma's sly smile. "And it's not just dark magic." In the eerie, magical red light, he fell into thought. Witchcraft, curses, alchemy, many different types of magic are intertwined here. How could this be possible? A series of images from the past 20 years flashed through his mind. The manager, the machines, the days of training. It has been 20 years since the returnees began to reappear. Magic tools are still scarce, and magic technology is underdeveloped. Not letting him reminisce for long, a figure in a black robe stepped forward under the watchful eyes of the others. Because the energy rules of abilities change depending on each world, combining many different abilities into one. The Blood Covenant is more impressive than I thought. He took out a long, thin dagger with serrated blades and slowly sliced his palm. His blood flowed out. "Hold out your hand for the test. It will sting a bit." To his surprise and worry, His hand began to bleed bright red blood. Ugh! The blood flowing from his palm quickly gathered into 5 bright red blood spheres, linked together in front of the astonished people. 5 blood spheres, level 5, huh, based on how tightly they are connected. Under the vampire's surprised and slightly frightened gaze, the figure in the black robe put on a mysterious and serious face. Your regeneration ability seems quite strong. You are a pureblood from Uterica, level 5 or 6, right? Gamma, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke, his voice filled with joy and mockery. I was a bit worried when I found out you came from a dimension I had never heard of, but only level 5, huh? What a waste of worry. He smiled, revealing his 2 sharp fangs, his eyes becoming cruel and violent. With level 5, there's no need to chop off any limbs. Let's begin. Yes, sir. With Gamma's permission, the figures in black robes began to make eerie, mysterious movements, smiling smugly and slyly at the vampire's fear. The magic circle was activated by the mages. He was shocked to realize the people in this room had a sinister plot. So they really had other motives after all. Hans turned back to Gamma, angry as he saw the smug look on his face. I knew this ritual was too complicated just to measure a level. I need to summon Hans quickly. In the terrifying silence, a sound suddenly echoed that caught Gamma's attention. Jin Soran angrily kicked open the door, followed by 1 man and 1 woman. Freeze, Gamma of the Blood Covenant, level 6. You are under arrest for kidnapping and murdering members of the organization. She fiercely entered the room, under the watchful eyes of those who came with her. Soren's appearance was unexpected by Gamma. He and the vampire simultaneously looked towards the door in shock. Miss Jin Soren, isn't it a bit rude to act like this after everything? This girl seems familiar. Soren seriously answered his question about her presence in this room. Who is she? When I received a report that you were kidnapping vampires, I wasn't sure if I should believe it, but I never expected that it was true. She looked directly at Gamma, pointing her finger and ordering, release that vampire and surrender immediately. Faced with Soran's determination, he was still terrifyingly calm, as expected from a small, naive slave in the Covenant. But have you ever wondered why we have to be slaves in the first place? Gamma and his subordinates were no longer able to maintain their composure. A look of hatred and animosity appeared on everyone's faces. We're much stronger than ordinary humans. Why do we have to obey the rules of the Blood Covenant, sneak around among humans, and live hidden underground? Soran couldn't control her anger towards the man blinded by darkness. What are you saying? It's because of warmongers like you, doing such stupid things that we were forced to live in hiding from the start. With a contemptuous smile, his gaze became sharp and brutal. That's just your opinion. Minyoung, who followed Soran, had now changed. His fist trembled with anger. But do your comrades share that thought? What? Suddenly, he swung his hand at the woman standing next to him. Kurg. Soran was terrified at his transformation. 5 sharp, shining claws sprouted from his hand. Minyoung, what are you doing? He did not utter a word and directly cut off her words by stabbing her. Why are you betraying us? Minyoung released all of his anger on Soran's body. The reason I betrayed you is very simple. In my dimension, I was a lord with status and power. He gritted his teeth. But now, after returning to this reality, I have to live hidden in a dilapidated basement and work for some club. Soran was in pain when she realized she had been betrayed, and when she heard his outburst, Do you understand, Miss Jin Soran? Not all vampires live as comfortably as you. After that performance, Gamma smiled smugly, mocking her. So what is your plan? Kidnapping vampires? What do you want? Are you planning to go against the Blood Covenant with these low-level, half-baked vampires? Do you think it will take centuries to do that? He was merciless, using magic. Red lights appeared in his hand. In this reality, there is no way to accumulate more merit points. That means we cannot become stronger. But after a thorough research process, we have found a way. Vague red streaks wrapped around the woman's body, lifting her into the air under his control. A surefire method to become stronger, quickly. The woman's body was gradually brought closer to him, with Soran witnessing it, filled with pain both physically and mentally. What are you saying? Don't tell me that you have touched the forbidden art, right? Gamma put his hand close to the woman's neck, his two fangs showing ominously. Then where do you think all the kidnapped vampires have gone? Soran couldn't contain her emotions. She angrily screamed, "Don't tell me you created bloodthirsty vampires? Have you forgotten why we were suppressed in the first place?" Hans became infuriated after hearing that conversation. Bloodthirsty vampires? You mean eating your own kind? But on Earth, this is not like normal cannibalism. The blood droplets connected together. When a vampire devours one from another dimension, the unique vampire factors combine together. Vampires ate their own kind and trampled over their allies. If they couldn't overcome it, they would turn into bloodthirsty vampires, obsessed with their thirst. After the first blood-crazed vampire appeared, vampires were considered a global threat. Gamma gradually tightened his grip on the woman's body, smugly. But don't worry, after countless failed experiments, we have found a way to purify the remaining will in their blood. He sucked out all the remaining vitality in the female vampire's body. Your corpses are the perfect material for our experiments. A black substance immediately left the body, the magic circle. The substance gradually formed into a sphere in front of the vampire, not just to classify or measure vampire indicators, but also designed to turn vampires into a drug without any side effects, right? The spherical mass of blood aura flew closer to Gamma. He reached out and received it. Min Young, looking displeased, reiterated his conditions. Remember to keep your word. I risked coming here with you without being detected. Of course. He offered him a blood aura pill. Here, as promised. He immediately swallowed it with a satisfied and eager expression. Instantly, his body reacted violently. Sharp fangs, eyes flashing, muscles bulging, red and blue veins, and spikes all over his body. His new form was truly powerful, muscles rippling, his face satisfied. So this is what you get from eating your own kind that I've only ever heard about. The power boost is on a completely different level. I can't believe it's really happening. He swung his hand, squeezing Saran's neck, making it difficult for her to breathe. And more. A hollow sound. He lifted her up, forcing her to look straight at Gamma. You said you would provide the drug for those I bring, right? Give me more. All right. All right. I understand you are very interested in becoming stronger, but... He turned his attention to the vampire with a sly look. There is a process for these things. Our new guest is waiting. See? He was calm despite Saran's inner panic. Wait just a little bit longer, okay? Cool. With a weak, shallow voice, she could barely say, Stop. The vampire, who had been silent so far, spoke. 2 pure bloods and 4 low bloodlines? So, eating your own kind from another dimension is really that effective. He was unusually strong. I can't wait to see how strong I can become. He single-handedly broke through the magic circle. A blue power appeared under the floor, before the trembling Gamma and Min Young. After absorbing all of you, what the hell? From the blue smoke, a skeleton with a staff topped with a skull stepped out. Your stealth is quite good, but your protection skills are pathetic. Several other skeletons with shields charged out. From now on, don't anyone leave here without my permission. He, the man, and the figures in black robes were terrified. Their faces were ashen. What is that? Don't panic. Stand close together and we'll take them down one by one. Min Young went into a fighting stance, his muscles rippling, red veins appearing all over his body. He charged and punched a skeleton as if an explosion occurred at the moment of impact. Not stopping there, he charged at the staff-wielding skeleton with a fierce expression. Die. The other's body was transforming abnormally. The skeleton remained calm, standing still with its staff. So, even the appearance of vampires varies depending on the dimension, huh? He tapped the staff lightly on the ground, and a blue magic power appeared. The blue air quickly became solid, piercing Minyoung's body. Heinz jumped out to help. "Hey, I want to capture them, but don't let them lose blood. But I don't think you need help." He jumped on his back, holding tightly to his shoulders as the man trembled. "Is this a disadvantage of trying to grow naturally?" "Oh well, it's not a big deal." He bit down hard on his neck, and blood spurted out. He painfully yelled, "There are a ton of snacks coming." "What the hell is that guy doing? Don't tell me. He's actually eating his own kind. How the heck have I survived until now, with the thought that I've betrayed them? I can't die like this, right? The mental damage is much worse. When I suck blood, I hear all kinds of thoughts and jumbled ideas. I can feel it. The changes in the vampire factor are being combined and evolved. System notification. You have unlocked the hybrid evolution skill. Not bad. With this skill, if I don't go crazy from the blood, I could be quite dangerous. Let's see. I need an organization to run errands for me. So what about a blood pact? And if anyone dares to resist, they will become my next meal, or part of my headless army. Dry, gaunt hands, stained with blood, trembling sharp claws, Kiok Gurg. On the magic circle, desiccated bodies lay scattered, and the vampire was satisfyingly draining the blood aura from the last mage's body. You have acquired a new vampire trait. Due to the effects of hybrid evolution, you have acquired the Kenai skill. Kenai allows you to measure the condition and physical stats of your opponent. Heinz, satisfied with his thirst, closed his eyes, savoring the sweet, worldly flavor. Kenai, huh? A useful skill. His body was gradually changing. His pupils were gradually transforming, and his fangs were becoming sharper. Each DNA particle in Heinz's cells was gradually renewing and evolving, and with the abilities I've acquired through hybrid evolution, I can steal all of those powers. A weak, trembling voice suddenly broke the mysterious and magical atmosphere. How the hell? Gamma! He was tied up on the cross, his hands and feet bound, unable to move. At his feet was the magic circle that appeared in the room earlier with a few candles. How can you devour your own kind and still maintain your sanity? Heinz smugly, lightly lifted his chin and teased. Interested. Do you want me to tell you how to prevent your brain from becoming corrupted? His face suddenly became terrifying. The whispers you hear when absorbing, you just have to not listen to them. The red threads binding him suddenly tightened, causing him extreme pain. What the hell? Gamma's body was gradually being drained of its life force, his hands and feet trembling. Due to the effects of hybrid evolution, you have acquired the concealment skill. Concealment allows you to erase your presence. Gamma was now just a dried-up corpse, his thick red hair now non-existent, his face shriveled and haggard. Concealment, huh? Not bad. There are many ways to utilize it. Heinz touched his head. His body was unresponsive. Now then, should I try looking inside this bastard's head? Images of him trading blood aura of other vampires appeared, making him furious. Kuh. Research, collaboration, support. The Holy Punishment Church, Lord Beta, about the promise. Heinz's face suddenly broke into a sweat. Beta is this bastard's superior, and the Holy Punishment Church was mentioned again. He stood in the middle of the magic circle, looking at the people who had died in this room. It seems this complicated ritual was also their work. What are these people really plotting while helping the Blood Covenant? Tonight, the moon was full. The tall buildings further enhanced the extravagance of the city. He drove the red sports car, gliding through the streets. Sauron had just woken up after fainting, after being rescued by him. Heinz coldly tossed her a sentence. "You're awake." She saw him as a beast. Unable to control her suspicion and anger, she lunged at him, grabbing his neck. "You scum! Daring to betray your own kind! Where are you taking me?" "Stop. Wait, look closely. I'm the vampire who was captured earlier." Sauron realized her reaction was a bit over the top and withdrew her hand, whispering, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. Can you explain what happened earlier?" Heinz asked. "Do you know the Haho mask? I escaped during the chaos when the militia suddenly stormed in." She suddenly smiled kindly. "Even so, you still saved me. Thank you very much. My name is Jin Soran from Nocturnia." He was slightly surprised. She seemed so familiar. That voice and face. No matter how I look at it, I feel like I've met her somewhere before. What exactly happened earlier? People from the same blood covenant fighting each other. She turned her face away. The blood covenant is currently deeply divided between hardline and moderate factions. Heinz had noticed she unconsciously clenched her fist when she mentioned this. We found evidence that the hardliners had kidnapped a member of our group, so I went there with some of my close colleagues. She said as if she was talking to herself, "We were lucky to escape safely." We also discovered the goal of these bastards. Now I just need to report it to my superiors and end everything. Heinz, listening to Soran, didn't seem to be interested at all. She really thinks things will be that easy to deal with, huh? Clearly, even the superiors of the hardliners are involved. Soran suddenly realized he was quite strong. By the way, what faction are you in? You saved me. Savior, just call me normally. So I'll call you Hyung. Okay. Heinz focused on driving, but he still replied. I only recently returned to Earth, so I'm not affiliated with any faction. I followed Gamma because I was curious about the Blood Covenant. Soran suddenly became enthusiastic, her eyes widening. If you're looking for a place to belong, what do you think about the Blood Covenant? Most vampires join it. The moderate faction doesn't do shady things, and they have a stable supply of blood through their connections with the blood bank. The car was still speeding down the road. His and Soran's voices continued, Is that so? Maybe I'll consider it. Great, I'll guide you there. As dawn broke, he drove the car to a modern house, guided by her. This way. Nahi, seeing her sister, called out, Soranunni. The little girl ran straight into her arms, chirping, I heard what happened. Are you okay, Nahi? Did you behave? Soran turned to him and introduced, Say hi to him. This is Mr. Heinz. He's about to join the Blood Covenant. Say hello. She happily bent down to rub Nahi's head. All right. I'll take Mr. Heinz to the room. Play here by yourself. Okay? Yes, but please hurry back. As Heinz was walking up the stairs, he was curious. That child earlier... Soran, who was leading the way, said, In there is too small. Is it just on the outside? No, Nahi isn't a returnee. Soran turned and slowly explained to him, Aren't all vampires returnees? No, Nahi was born and grew up on Earth. On the wall was a picture of Nahi with her father. Instead, her father was a returnee. He turned her into a vampire to save her from an incurable disease. Heinz understood more about Earth through her explanation. Now I understand why the government wants to control vampires. In a way, they're trying to cut off an infectious disease from the outside. Soran turned again, continuing to guide him to the room. But of course, that method isn't commonly used. Infecting people on Earth takes more time and blood. A picture of Nahi chasing butterflies was neatly hung on the wall. Especially Nahi's father wanted her to live confidently under the sunlight. He really pushed himself to his limit. Soran grabbed the doorknob, opening the door. We're here. It was a spacious room. She let him in. If you need anything, just call me. It's late. Please get some rest. Soran smiled brightly, making a V sign with her hand to wave goodbye. Okay, goodbye. Her actions made him unconsciously remember someone. That gesture, that voice. Heinz suddenly realized the person in front of me was the one on TV. I remember now. BJ, broadcast jockey, Pongran. Jin Soran, hearing him say that, was startled and confused. What? She shifted from being startled to being embarrassed and shy. That ending phrase of that stream still lingers in my mind. And you're not a follower of those streams, are you? Heinz quickly waved his hands in denial. No. I only saw those lines pop up on the broadcast a few times, that's all. Thank goodness. I almost died of embarrassment. She felt proud when she recalled her past. Actually, I was a trainee idol. After quitting, I felt it was a shame, so I decided to do streaming. Heinz was curious about Soran's identity. A trainee. How old are you? I'm 22 years old. I awakened when I was 18. In contrast to her enthusiasm, Heinz felt a sense of suffocation and awkwardness. And what about you? How old are you? When did you awaken? Oh my, me. He quickly slammed the door shut, leaving only one sentence. I'll tell you later. What? He left her standing outside, confused. Did I say something wrong? He was standing behind the door, sweat pouring down, panting. Phew. I thought she was younger, so I was just talking casually. He was only 20 years old. He bit his nails, pondering. So she was my senior. Heinz plopped down on the bed, thinking. No wonder she looked familiar. It turns out she's a streamer. I heard she was pretty famous. Should I look her up? He opened his phone and looked up information about Saran. So, after posting this message, she went to the scene from earlier. Looking closely, this house is luxurious and modern. If it weren't for me, this would have been the last one. That was close. The sky was clear, the warm golden sunlight shone on the walls of the house. Somewhere, a shout echoed, "What did you say?" Heinz woke up, sitting up in bed, scratching his head, showing his displeasure at the shouting. Why can't they find it in such a big place? What is all this noise so early in the morning? He quickly went downstairs. There's no evidence at all. Impossible. Seeing her talking on the phone. Is something wrong? Hyung, did you sleep well? She told him with a displeased face. My colleagues went to the scene, but everything was burned to ashes, so they couldn't find anything. Now we can't put pressure on the hardliners. Hearing this, he became unnatural and coughed slightly. They really went all out trying to erase the traces of Hans. What a pity. I have something to ask you, though. Heinz took his phone out of his pocket and gave it to her. Please mark the location of the hardliners' headquarters. Huh. The hardliners' headquarters. Jin Saran grabbed his hand in shock and questioned him. Don't tell me. The blood covenant doesn't suit you. No, calm down. Soran forced a smile, looking at him. Those dangerous bastards. Wouldn't it be better to know their location to counter them? Oh, I understand. Soran happily grabbed his phone and marked the location. Wait a moment. Heinz is currently at the edge of the bloodline territory. He would be at level 6 or 7, according to Earth standards. She handed him back the phone, which now had locations marked. To turn Heinz into a true blood, you need to absorb other pure bloods. Here. As long as you avoid those marked locations, you'll be safe. Heinz waved his hand to show he didn't need further instructions. I'll prepare a simple breakfast for you. No need, don't worry. Heinz looked at the phone screen, which now had markings all over the city. I see a lot of restaurants nearby, so... Heinz put on a hungry and expectant expression. I was thinking of going out and exploring some delicious food. Blood dripped from the corner of Han Seong-yun's mouth. He wiped the blood away with his hand, sighing, delicious. In front of him were corpses scattered everywhere, blood staining every surface. He sat in the middle, speaking, This place is truly a wonderful restaurant. Suddenly a voice made Han Seong-yun start and search for the source. Cough, you bastard. A man lay on the ground, his eyes full of resentment. He spoke through gritted teeth. Do you think you'll get away with this? My clan will hunt you down and devour you alive. Hearing this, Han Seong-yun raised his hand, his eyes full of hope as he asked, Me? How could you possibly know who I am? The camera in the corner of the room had recorded everything. It flashed a red light. He spoke, Thanks to the concealment ability I took from you? From the camera, the whole room could be seen dimly. Han Seong-yun continued, Now, those guys are all just blind idiots. He then went over to the man lying on the ground and gently announced, This move always works, so... He lifted the man's chin. His hand, filled with murderous intent, came closer, causing the man to feel fear. He asked like he was torturing, Do you want to reveal the location of your remaining comrades, darling? A figure wandered among the crowd. A voice announced, Attention! All Gamma members will gather at the mansion tomorrow to participate in a meeting. His face now had Han Seong-yun's murderous hand on it. He was confused. The leaders of the hardline faction are gathering. Seeing his frightened face, Han Seong-yun was amused. This is big, the perfect opportunity to wipe out the whole nest. He let go of the man's face. He fearfully kneeled on the ground. Han Seong-yun was hurried. I need to leave right away, but before that I need to clean this place up. He smiled. A bright red flower appeared on his palm. This is my power, blood flower. Then the flower gradually dissolved into the space of the room. Blood flower. Shed blood to create a burning flower. It only incinerates the chosen target and only extinguishes when ordered by the caster. The petals spread around the room, quickly erasing the remaining bloodstains. Han Seong-yun thought to himself, I'll use the new blood flower technique I acquired after dealing with these people to incinerate any physical traces, and as for the magical traces, I'll use my concealment skill. He clenched his fist, smiling smugly. With this, no one will find me. Suddenly, his heart vibrated, making Han Seong-yun stop. He held his hand out. He discovered that more blood vessels were appearing on his body. This feeling, my body is evolving again. Han Seong-yun involuntarily coughed up blood. Grr. The system notified, special skill, bloodline, pure blood, evolved to true blood. His fingernails slowly fell to the ground. Due to the effects of hybrid evolution, you have received an enlightenment. You have acquired the skill, blood flow diffusion. His body was upgrading into a new being. Han Seong-yun realized, finally, it's done. The system continued to notify. The body's regeneration ability has surpassed its limits. The regeneration skill has evolved into super regeneration. He looked at his two hands. Finally, I have become a true blood. Furthermore, I have acquired new skills. Han Seong-yun used his long fingernail to cut his wrist to see what kind of skills they were. Immediately, blood gushed from his wrist. Drops of blood hung in the air. Suddenly, they accelerated and flew in one direction. They quickly flew back to his wrist, where he had just cut himself. Then, they healed instantly. The wound on my artery healed instantly. The combined power between the blood manipulation of a true blood and super regeneration is terrifying. Looking at his newfound power, Han Seong-yun imagined a new, stronger version of himself. If I could absorb the blood of the creatures around me to recover while fighting, I could say I am invincible. Han Seong-yun thought, if true blood is already this powerful. He looked in a mirror and a picture of a noble woman appeared. Han Seong-yun continued to think, then how terrifying must holy blood be? A small mouse was happily holding a piece of cheese. It was joyful. Orca Soup has supported 1,000 cheeses. I just saw the notification that Orchid is back, and I ran to the channel like a dog. Ooh. A sigh rang out. Oh my. Jin Soran happily laughed in front of the screen. Positive comments continuously appeared on her live stream. Thank you. A fan, Orchi, has supported 1,000 cheeses. You have 1,000 points as well. Suddenly, Han Seong-yun opened the door to the room. She still didn't notice, and continued to live stream, thinking, great, this is enough to buy blood pouches for a month without worry. Then, Jin Soran turned around, discovering that he had been standing there for a long time. Seeing this, he blushed. She was silent for a moment, stunned as she looked at him. Han Seong-yun broke the silence. I know that earning money from other people is not easy. Sorry, you should continue doing what you were doing. Jin Soran was surprised. She shyly yelled, Ugh, Ko-en! Her loud scream echoed in the house. Knock before you enter. Jin Soran sighed and asked, So? After hitting Han Seong-yun, she folded her arms and interrogated him. What is it? He kneeled on the ground, smiling awkwardly. Well... Then he handed her a letter. There's a letter for you. Inside were many pictures of a strange organization performing a ritual. Jin Soran opened each picture and examined them. She was surprised. More evidence of the hardliners' crimes. A person, who remains anonymous, was able to send such detailed information. She recalled the face of a strange person. He was wearing a mask. I don't know who this person is, but that person's actions are very similar to the masked figure. Then, Jin Soran looked at Han Seong-yun, who was slowly getting up. But the only person I shared information about the hardliners with was Heinz, and these leads started to appear after I told Mr. Heinz about the hardliners' location. She observed the young man's face and continued her thoughts. Is it possible that these two people are working together, or is it just a coincidence? In the quiet night, a blue moonlight shone on the ground. A voice echoed, Han Seong-hyun and a stranger were standing on a rooftop. The two exchanged words. So, this is where the hardline leaders hold their meetings. The other person hearing this replied, they're holding a meeting to find a countermeasure against the Ha-Ho mask. It makes things even easier for me. Han Seong-hyun used his magic, his eyes widening, clairvoyance. He immediately observed the inside of the building. He quietly said, there's an invisible blood barrier surrounding the building. Inside the room, an important meeting was taking place. Han Seong-hyun continued to inform, blood flow diffusion, and the place they are gathering is on the first floor. The masked person slumped to the ground, leaving him alone to observe. Just as predicted, a bunch of members at Gamma's level in the same place. The energy I'm sensing is not to be underestimated at all. Han Seong-hyun chuckled with pleasure. He jumped off the rooftop. Okay, I need to hide Hans in the shadows and then storm in together and take them all down in one go. He broke through a glass window and charged straight into the meeting room. Then Han Seong-hyun landed gently, his voice fearless, challenging. Raise your hands and surrender, you criminals. The room was empty. Not a single person was there. He was surprised. What? They're definitely here. Han Seong-hyun was confused. Is no one here? Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. Damn it! I was still planning to catch the Ha-Ho mask. A group of strange people were standing behind the broken glass, speaking mysteriously. But some strange vampires showed up. Then they broke through the glass, speaking and surprising Han Seong-hyun, who immediately defended himself. Well then, let's capture you instead. Alpha pointed and asked those behind him, Beta 1, Beta Shin, do you know anything about this? Beta 1 replied indifferently, we don't know anything. This person is at least level 7, but he's a completely new face. Beta Shin next to him added, maybe this person appeared from thin air. Han Seong-hyun heard the entire conversation. He knew the ranks, Beta. I heard that in the memories of the hardliners. The leader is Alpha. Under him are the 2 Betas, then the 13 Gammas. Looking at the cruel face and the incomprehensible smiles of the 2 Betas, he thought, so, both Betas are here. Behind the 3 people were 2 strangers. Han Seong-hyun continued to think, the bigger problem is that the masked people seem to be from the Holy Punishment Church. I can't sense any energy from them, no matter what they're using. It's beyond my abilities. The 3 people began to close in on Han Seong-hyun. First, bring that man to me. And of course, Alpha pointed at him and the one hiding in the shadows. Han Seong-hyun was surprised and looked behind him. He smiled at them. The shadow was still under his feet. They knew. It seems you guys are quite strong, huh? We'll see about that. Han Seong-hyun immediately retaliated. He quickly revealed his true form, his eyes flashing sparks, and said through gritted teeth, I'll take care of you all quickly. He stepped back, naming his move, Skill, Blood Flow. Vibrate Fusion. Quick as lightning, the 3 enemies were immediately hit. Blood slowly flowed out, and acceleration. Han Seong-hyun grabbed one of the enemy's heads. His face was no longer normal. One of the enemies, seeing this, fearfully pointed at Han Seong-hyun and said, he's personally sucking the blood of his own kind. Unbelievable. Without saying much, Han Seong-hyun quickly scanned through the area. There's no time to be surprised. The people quickly turned into dried-up skeletons. Han Seong-hyun spoke, the real show starts now. The frightened people backed away. Eek. They yelled to each other, trying to escape the room. Get out of the way! Even if I get punished, I must survive first. He grabbed the doorknob. A stream of demonic power quickly arrived. It pushed him far away. He yelled in fear. Ah! A stranger was standing in front of the door, saying, It's not just you who knows how to create barriers. The masked person spoke. From now on. Both he and Han Seong-hyun, filled with vigor, said, "This is a fight to the death. There's no escape."